Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The ceremony is about to begin. This entertainment is not new. You've seen this entertainment through and through. You've seen your birth, your life, your death. You might recall all the rest. Tell me, did you have a good world when you died? Enough to base a movie on? What are the humans doing?
Do you think you're ready? Can you handle the truth? Or are you in denial and demanding more proof? They demonstrate in real time how they're spinning you lies, but no one pays attention, no one opens their eyes. They walk around like zombies with their head in the mobiles, signaling their virtues with a pick on their profile. Yeah. Signaling their virtues with a pick on their profile. So if you think you're ready, you don't need more proof. Conspiracy deniers are denying the truth. They fabricate our problems and pretend to provide the best solution, but we all know they lied. They lied about the weapons and they lied about health. They lied about the fact that they're transferring the wealth. You should really notice how they're pushing the fear. Keep everybody terrified and not thinking clear. Yeah. Everybody's not thinking clear. Keep everybody terrified. Yeah, thinking and not thinking. Keep everybody terrified and not thinking clear. When you do, you realize that this is a trick. It's getting really stupid now, they're taking the mic. Said, do you think you're ready? Can you handle the truth? Or are you in denial and demanding more proof? They demonstrate in real time how they're spinning you lies, but no one pays attention, no one opens their eyes. They walk around like zombies with their head in the mobiles, signaling their virtues with a pick on their profile. Yeah, signaling their virtues on their profile. Hey.
Oh, Sasquatch? Oh, yeah, he's like the Sandy Waxler of YouTubes.
Next time he'll get his own ketchup.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Chillin' with Sasquatch. We're one binky short of a show, but that's not going to stop us, and I'm not going to wax philosophical for too long before we get off into this. Although I am going to say this much. These really big Red Bulls are freaking magnificent, man. These things are fucking crazy. Anyway, that's beside the point. Red Bull makes it sting. But listen, what's up, Cat? I'm going to go back through chat right quick so we can get this out of the way, and then we're going to get into the actual meat and drink of the show. Smoking Auditor gets the gold. Running in Circles gets the silver. And ATL Transparency News gets the bronze. Welcome to the show, folks. We got Dennis Boles. Boye? Is that Denis Boye? Boye! Sorry, it's the Red Bull. I blame that. We got motherfucking LBG. And then C4T, I have it on good authority, it's called CAT or something similar. Close enough for government work. And Claiborne County Transparency. Welcome to the show, bud. Good to see you. Get all my stuff, fix it up and settled up. All right. So to begin with, what do we know about Davy Jones? What did you read? But would it surprise you to know that that particular tale is quite old? Or would you call it bullshit? I don't know. Maybe. Let's find out.
Life is cruel. Why should the afterlife be any different?
Cold and cruel, like winds on the sea. In the Pirates of the Caribbean universe, no creature strikes as much fear into the hearts of sailors. Some mighty crews have battled with powerful Navy ships, battled other crews, or have even battled each other in crew mutinies. And many who chose a life of piracy never feared for their immortal souls, as they would often commit heinous crimes. The thing they feared most, above all else, was Davy Jones, the former Scottish sailor who fell in love with the sea goddess Calypso, and spent 10 years at sea fulfilling duties charged to him of guiding wayward souls to the afterlife. After that decade, Jones returned to land in hopes of seeing Calypso once more, but she was nowhere to be found. So Jones told the Brethren Court how to bind her in human form, and out of guilt, he carved his heart out. Now, Jones appears as a demonic-looking sea beast, and he spends his time passing judgment on innocent sailors and press gangs them into joining his crew of marine nightmare fuel. And throughout the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy, Davy Jones is an absolute f***ing unit.
Fully agree. I completely agree with that statement. In the Pirates of the Caribbean series, he is quite literally a total unit. Let me get everything back on kill. I did a nautical joke. Gorge. I'll say, boy, he's a big old tentacly face man. That's what kind he is, I say. Not really here. Welcome in. I hope I gave everybody the right link. What was I doing? That Red Bull really runs some freaking Yellow Jackets around in my brain, let me tell you. Oh yeah, no, I was doing the thing with the stuff, right. Pin that. All right, so this is The Sea is the name of the channel, which I think is fucking awesome. And can you imagine being able to get that freaking The Sea? It's just The Sea. That's brilliant. I love it.
Easily one of the best villains in the modern age of storytelling. For this video, I could just talk about why he's such a fantastic villain, but I already did that. Instead, I will discuss what myths inspired the Davy Jones character we see in the Pirates franchise. Buckle up, because this story is about to get weird.
Hello, Blackwatch. Welcome in. Good to see you. Not really here.
Let's start with a real simple piece of Davy Jones' origin story to discuss the real history of Calypso. Simply put, this barely has anything to do with the Pirates of the Caribbean at all, and more so to do with Greek mythology. Calypso is a water nymph who, according to legend, wanted to keep the fabled Greek hero Odysseus from leaving her island. Apparently, she effectively kept him as her prisoner for 7 years, until Zeus sent Hermes to basically tell her to not kidnap people against their will to fulfill her fantasies.
Okay, so that takes the tale that of the concept of the tale back to at least early Bronze Age.
Yikes. Calypso was, as mentioned prior, a water nymph, not a full-blown goddess like in the Pirates of the Caribbean films. However, she is the daughter of the Titan Atlas in both the Pirates of the Caribbean storyline and the Greek myth. Next up, we have the terror of the deep in many stories and legends. The Kraken.
And I don't think it's cracking anyways. Always heard it said cracking.
Oh, with a long A? No. Kraken's how it's pronounced in the original Scandinavian, and Kraken's closer to that.
Well, we ain't original Scandinavians, are we?
There are few creatures in fiction that could be more frightening. Human beings are lowly land dwellers, so the human brain was never truly meant to understand what kinds of creatures lurk deep below the waves, which could be why so many find deep-sea fish to be so eerie. And as humans would set out across the waves over the past few thousand years, the people of centuries past would come up with some fantastical sea monsters. Everything from the Hydra to the Leviathan to sirens. The imagination of sailors and explorers would create some truly fantastical monsters.
These are the same guys that when looking at a manatee decided that it might be a beautiful woman?
One, however, stands out from the rest, as it has a real-life counterpart that likely inspired the legends. The kraken is usually described as some form of cephalopod, usually being some kind of squid or octopus, so incredibly massive that it would drag entire ships down to the crushing depths of the sea and consume the sailors aboard. These legends originate from Norway, as it was said to live in Scandinavian waters. The first supposed sighting of the creature came from the early 1700s, but it would eventually become a mainstay in popular culture with Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which Walt Disney would eventually adapt into a feature film in the 1950s. As mentioned before, the kraken may actually have roots in reality. The giant squid is a species of squid that reaches around 40 feet in length and is easily one of the largest animals on the planet. Adding to the potential for this being the inspiration for the kraken, the giant squid is a deep-sea dweller, so any sighting of this creature for your average fisherman would most likely be pretty off-putting. Imagine you're just going out, casting your line, and you see this absolutely massive creature with so many arms moving in an alien motion, and you look into its huge black eyes. Just imagine the fear that those seafarers had. Due to the rarity of giant squids appearing in shallower waters, we don't have many pictures or videos of them, and as such, scientists are only able to hypothesize about their behavior in the wild. One thing that is known for sure, however, is that sperm whales are predatory toward giant squids. Scientists have found the beaks of giant squids inside the stomachs of beached whales. They've also found large suction cup marks that match the size and shape of the giant squids on the faces of sperm whales, likely caused by fierce battles between the two before the sperm whale likely won. But what if I were to make you even more scared of the ocean? There is another squid far bigger than the giant squid. In the frigid waters of the Antarctic Ocean, the colossal squid makes its home here. According to the Museum of New Zealand, the colossal squid lives in the crushing dark depths of up to 1,000 meters below the surface, and so far, only females have been found. The discovery of the colossal squid happened in 1925, and it was found in the stomach of the sperm whale. Since then, only 8 have been found. The overall length is usually around 14 meters, or 45 feet. I just find it funny how with all the terrifying creatures and mythical monsters that have existed in human legends for millennia, this one actually turned out to be real. Next up, we have the Flying Dutchman. In the films, the Flying Dutchman is the legendary vessel of Davy Jones, which he would use to hunt down ships from across.
An absolute unit as well. That thing is amazing. The footage they do of it in the movies is absolutely phenomenal. The very first scene where you encounter the Flying Dutchman, it just bounces up out of the water. When I was in theater, everybody in the theater went. There was like this mass gasp effect, and it was cool.
Across the seas, the people who'd be forced into servitude aboard the Dutchman would, over the course of their time aboard, become parts of the ship itself. Part of the crew, part of the ship. Now, much like the previous topics in the video, the Flying Dutchman is based on real-life myths. For many centuries, sailors would look out on the waves and see mysterious objects in the distance. Oftentimes, these would be identified as ships, and the most famous of these ghost ships was the Flying Dutchman. Sailors claimed that on stormy nights, they could see the massive ship sailing in the distance, and that it would be a sign of doom in the near future. The story goes that a man named Hendrik van der Dicken was the captain of the mighty merchant ship that would sail from Amsterdam to Java by way of making port at the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. One day, Van der Dicken would make a risky move to sail through a massive storm, and proclaimed,
"May I be eternally damned if I do, though I should beat about here till the day of judgment."
And, as legend has it, the devil himself, or some form of sea-ruling entity like the gods, would make this proclamation a reality, and the Dutchman would sail upon the waves for all eternity, never to make port again. And according to some myths, the devil made a deal with the Dutchman captain, in which he would free himself and his crew by finding true love with a woman, but he could only make port once every 7 years.
Hold up, Lightwatch.
Sound familiar?
I'm not 100% familiar with Captain Highliner. The name sounds familiar to an extent that I have a vague chill up my back when I read that name, but I'm not immediately cottoning to what it is. I have to check that one out. That might be on a show soon. Coming soon.
Likely the most famous reported sighting of the Dutchman was in 1881 by the future King George V and Prince Albert Victor, While they're serving aboard the HMS Bashant, the two spotted a mysterious vessel in the distance while sailing in Australian waters. They noticed a mysterious red glow that surrounded the ship, and this was supposedly witnessed by 13 other crewmen.
Pusser. Yes, sir.
Soon after the sighting,
Booby.
a crewman was found dead after having fallen from the crow's nest. Could this have been caused by the apparition of the Dutchman? The unfortunate and eerie truth is, we will never truly know. Another sighting in 1939 had Cape Town locals witnessing a large ship sailing straight towards land at full mast, making collision imminent, only to have the ship disappear without a trace. The final known sighting of the Flying Dutchman was during World War II by the Nazi admiral Karl Donitz, who spotted it with his crew while sailing through the east of Suez. Theoretical explanations for the sighting of the Flying Dutchman include mirages, sailors being drunk while sailing, and another obvious reason of simply seeing another ship in the distance. And while we could simply write off these sightings as any one of these situations, there was still an undeniable fact that people did see something that made them fear for their lives. They spotted something that shook them to their core. Who knows? Maybe the Flying Dutchman is still out there. Now, for the man himself, Davy Jones. Who was he? To answer this, we must discuss his...
Who was Davy Jones? Who was the man behind the...
locker? To put it simply, Davy Jones' locker is sailor's hell. The phrase, send them to Davy Jones' locker, simply means to kill them and send them to hell, with the first reference to this being in 1726. So with this, we can start with the obvious theory. Many people believe Davy Jones is simply a nickname for the devil, as it would make sense to have the owner of a hellish locker be the devil. Another theory is that Davy Jones is named after a real pirate named David Jones. David Jones was active in the 1630s in the Indian Ocean. What makes his theory fall flat, however, is that David Jones was by no means a famous pirate, so to have his name become popular enough to be still used nearly a century after his heyday is very unlikely. Another theory is that Davy Jones, much like his film incarnation, was actually the true captain of the Flying Dutchman, instead of Vanderdecker. Yet another theory claims that Davy Jones was a pub owner in London who would imprison rowdy patrons in a makeshift locker and sell them into slavery or piracy. All of these theories are effectively based...
So, in reality, the tambourine player from the Monkees went back in time 5,000 years to ferry lost sailors to the land of the dead in order to get some hoochie mama coochie once every 7, 10, 12, 15 years. I don't know. Sounds good to me, man. It's just as good as any other description I've heard.
Baseless speculation and have no real evidence put towards them. Our final theory, however, is far more plausible in my eyes. The biblical Jonah may be the true Davy Jones. The story goes of the prophet Jonah that was tasked by God to go to Nineveh, which is an ancient Assyrian city in modern-day Iraq. God wanted Jonah to prophesy a great disaster that would occur because of the wickedness of the city. Jonah feels that the city deserves what it gets, so he elects to not go and follow the word of God and boards a ship headed in the opposite direction in hopes of fleeing from God. A storm engulfs the ship, and Jonah admits that he defied God, so he willingly allowed the crew of the ship to throw him overboard in order to quell the waves, where he would then be swallowed by a giant fish. As some variation of the legend goes, the crew viewed Jonah as some kind of devil, a traitor. Devil Jonah. Or Devil Jonas. Devil Jonas? Davy Jones. Ladies and gentlemen, this could be the origin of the name Davy Jones. Now,
all right. If you pass that through some Gaelic, you're probably onto something there, because you can make pretty much anything out of Gaelic, man. Because, I mean, that stuff just makes very little sense on its surface. I mean, how do you turn a group of sneezes and a minor cold into a language? I don't get it.
There is another potential origin that is somewhat linked, and that is of Welsh sailors invoking the name of Saint David of Wales, while also invoking the name of Jonah, saying Jonas. Now, of course,
if you can't read that, this is, oh my God.
Even if these have some level of evidence or strong reasoning behind them, they're still just theories. Much like the mysterious ghost stories of the Flying Dutchman, we can never truly know for a fact where the name came from. Maybe there was a cruel man named Davy Jones that would go on to inspire the legends of the locker that greedy and evil sailors would be doomed to face. Or it could simply be from the drunken ramblings of some tired sailor in a tavern. I think what makes the stories of the Dutchman and Davy Jones so interesting is that they'll forever be a mystery to us. While knowing the real-world explanation for the Kraken and the Greek myths that inspired Calypso, it's also fun having our imagination fill in the blanks for us. Thank you so much for taking time to watch this video. If you liked it, I'd greatly appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribe. Comment down below with your thoughts on these topics, as I would love to get a discussion going on this. Do you think Davy Jones was named after Jonah?
Edward
Do you think
Teach.
people
Damn
actually...
right. Edward Teach is the man with the master plan. Dude, I have a beard, and it's not... There's no way I could put freaking... there's no way. His beard would have to be truly, truly vicious. What is it? Jake always says filthy.
And
It'd
curious,
have to be truly filthy.
Knopf's and her son.
Stop it. All right, this is another good channel I found recently. It's the Mysterious Hook, and he does like all of these. It's not all true crime, but it does all kind of fit the line there, you know. But he does good work, and it's showing. I mean, like. He's got the subscribers to prove it. So, all right. So in this bit, in 1990, there was a case that went cold, and it wasn't solved until recently, apparently because of a podcast that occurred where the right people got the right information at the right time. And I've been dying to watch this video. This thing has been sitting over here for like, I don't know, a few days now. I think the last 2 shows I had it up here and never got to it. So I'm excited. Are you excited? I'm excited. Just keep swimming. Just keep.
November 17th, 1990. A Saturday, the second day of firearms deer hunting season. 33-year-old Doug Estes headed out that afternoon with his stepson and a friend.
It's pretty hard to talk about. You know, your first child is kind of special.
Estes' stepson discovered the bodies.
They were not connected in any way together.
November 17th, 1990 was the perfect day to go for a hunt. But before they could score a game, the lives of Doug Estes and Jim Bennett were tragically cut short in Kalamazoo County, setting in motion a chain reaction that would span over 3 decades. 2 hunters were killed and 2 hunters were suspects. Amidst the enigma, a hidden clue lay dormant, holding the key to unlocking the mystery. What was that clue that could not be unearthed sooner? Why did it take so long for the investigators to uncover the truth? Kalamazoo County, Michigan. In the vibrant landscape of the 1990s, Kalamazoo County, Michigan was a place where hard work, strong relationships, and a shared commitment to progress defined the way of life. As of that period,
and meth. There's a lot of meth in Michigan too.
The population of Kalamazoo County, Michigan, stood at 223,411. It was a melting pot of people with different aspirations. Against the backdrop of this dynamic county, the 1990s unfolded as a transformative decade, with one crime defining its history. The fateful day. It was November 17th, 1990, a rather warm day in Kalamazoo County. A group of hunters were on their way to catch a good game in the Fulton State Game Area. Among them were Bobby Brown and his stepfather, Doug Estes. The group decided to split up and thought that it was a good strategy, going in different directions. Doug, Bobby, and others were focused on hearing even the slightest of sounds to detect the deer's movement. Winter days were often quiet, so when the sound of 2 gunshots echoed, it caught the attention of the group and the nearby residents. Just a few minutes after it, Helen Knopfs, a local resident, and her son heard a car screech off into a ditch just down the road from her house. Was this a coincidence?
X to doubt on that one. If it's not a paved road, it's not screeching off into shit.
Or could it be related to the shots that were recently fired? The timing and proximity could not have been a coincidence, but the fact remained that gunshots were not unusual in the area. Concerned and curious, Knopfs and her son approached the car and saw a man behind the steering wheel. Covered in sweat, he seemed nervous, and the look on his face was plain unfriendly. Knopfs thought he needed help, so she offered to
I think I might want to get in touch with that man, get that girl's number, and gave him a panic attack.
Call a tow truck for him, but he refused, saying that he ended up in the ditch because a deer had suddenly appeared and crossed the road. While the reason seemed genuine, after all, people used to come here and hunt deer, there was something amiss. He seemed to be in a hurry to leave.
Well, I'm not going to lie, I'm a smoking auditor. I might be that guy who just disappears off alone because I don't want the group with me. So yeah, you might think I'm dead. I'm probably just watching though. I am Sasquatch.
And Knopfs thought he was pretending to be calm, which was odd. She offered to call the police, but the man in the car was not at all seeking any help. He expressed disinterest in involving law enforcement, confident that someone else would fix his car.
That's really good, dude.
Just
That's
like
hilarious.
That, he drove away. But the echoes of the gunshots were still fresh. Bobby Brown thought that his stepfather had caught the deer because the sound came from the direction he went. Almost excited to congratulate him, he went on in the same direction and found Doug lying on his back on the ground in a pool of blood.
The direction that Doug was hunting, I assumed he got a deer. So I decided I'd slowly walk back up.
It was such an unusual sight that the first thought Bobby could muster was if it was a prank that Doug was trying to play. As reality sunk in, he could not believe what he was looking at. But there had been 2 gunshots.
I will be honest, though. It depends on what's after us. If it's people after us, yeah, I'm going to probably have to scoot off by myself to go deal with some people after us, you know. But if we're dealing with a bear, I'm just going to cut one of you and run.
It could have meant that Doug was shot twice. However, he had only 1 bullet wound. The other possibility was that someone really tried killing him by firing 2 simultaneous shots and missed one. But when Bobby looked around in a frantic state, his eyes landed on another thing that he could not believe. There was another body lying face down.
I started checking to see if Doug had a pulse, and he didn't. And I run over and rolled James Bennett over, and there was no sense in even feeling for a pulse on him.
He checked for Doug's pulse first, but there was no hope. So he quickly ran.
Mr. Dennis Bowles, if you decide to eat bear, and it is your decision to do so, take it from someone who has attempted to. If the bear is not killed in the right phase of the year, and depending on where it comes from, it's horrendous. It's the toughest shit I have ever cooked in my entire life. You can't even drop it in a crock pot and have it come apart. It was absolutely untakeable. You would do better using it for shoe leather, bro.
Ran over to the other man's body and rolled him over, but he was clearly dead.
And Sasquatch
There was
approves.
nothing Bobby could do. He ran off to ask for some help and quickly informed the police. The stage was set for a thorough investigation by the police, who arrived promptly to scrutinize the unsettling events that unfolded on that fateful day. The officers confirmed the presence of the 2 bodies that Bobby had already informed them about. The first job at their hands was to identify the victims, and soon enough, the police knew who they were. Since Bobby had called the police, he had already identified his stepfather, Doug, and the other man was Jim Bennett, who was a nature lover and was on a solo hunt that day. Both Doug.
All right, here's my theory. They went out there to go meet up with the same hooker to get some meth. They got mad, shot at each other, and the hooker ran off with the meth.
Doug Estes and Jim Bennett were hit in the back at close range through their hunting licenses. The weird thing was that the men had been shot using different firearms.
But I like beaver
One theory
myself.
was that they had shot each other somehow, mistaking each other as the deer they had been looking for. The first issue was that both of them had been shot in the back, so it was almost impossible for them to hit the mark. And the second inconsistency arose when ballistic tests showed that Jim's muzzle loader was fully loaded and Doug's gun was nowhere to be found at the site. But that was only the first stage of confusion. The case was assigned to now retired detective Bruce Wiersema and Sergeant Roy Ballard. Wiersema was overwhelmed by it as he was not experienced in homicide cases, let alone double homicide. The area had not even witnessed murder cases in a long time. However, Wiersema decided to be thorough with the details to ensure a proper procedure. As the investigation proceeded, they found out that Doug and Jim were strangers to each other.
They were not connected in any way together.
So two strangers who just happened to end up in the same area.
That's what it appeared to be.
They had gone out to hunt separately, and it was only a coincidence that they were both killed at the same time. The detectives were already clueless. What could have been the motive of the kill? Had the victims been acquaintances, a mutual friend could have been identified. But now that there was no connection between them, it was all the more difficult to understand the case. But all hope was not lost, as their suspicions started building on Bobby Brown, the stepson of one of the victims.
You ever had any jellied beaver tail? They do it up kind of like pig's feet. You get like 2 wedges of beaver tail in a basket.
Detectives initially believed that the killings occurred because the target was Jim. According to them, Bobby had planned to rob him, but the robbery went wrong, and somewhere along the way, Doug was killed too. The police...
Hey, boo-boo, there's this guy named Dennis over here. I'm going to eat his skull like a picnic basket.
He suspected that since Bobby's plan did not work, he had to call the police.
I've waited a long time to meet you. I know. I'm Jan Estes.
Hey, Ernie, you want to share some of that beaver? Got a little bit of pickling to do over here.
Pleased to meet you. Sorry, it has to be in this circumstances.
Just say it. Save some for the rest of us too, honey.
Yeah. This is my son, Robert.
Hi, Robert. You were the one that found him, right?
But both Estes and Bennett's family believed that their loved one was not the main target, and Bobby's intentions and motives did not line up with the crime. No matter what the family said, the detective's suspicion radar was on alert. To look for any evidence that they had missed earlier, the police decided to search the crime site again and asked the neighbors if they heard or saw something suspicious that day. Sure enough, the neighbors had heard the gunshots, but the testimony given by Helen Knopfs provided a new angle to the story. She helped the officers create a composite sketch of the man whose car landed in the ditch. The mystery man was becoming a suspect, but there was no way to link him to the crime. So the detectives proceeded to talk to other neighbors. After thoroughly...
All right, so this guy was freaking out in the middle of the woods, saw these 2 guys, thought they were following him, and decided to get a 2 headshot, 1 bullet kill, try to get that Xbox achievement.
Conversing with them and delving into their accounts, a new name emerged from the shadows: Jeff Titus. Born in 1952, Jeff Titus was the owner of the property right behind the Fulton State Game Area, where it shared a boundary. He served as a police officer in the U.S. Marine Corps and later worked in the security detail for President Richard Nixon. Later, he found employment as a security guard at a VA medical center. Alongside his professional pursuits, he enjoyed hunting and spending time outdoors, but he was protective of his property. He used to get mad when hunters used to wander into his estates. So, could Doug and Jim have angered Titus by crossing the border into his place? The question on the detectives' minds was, where was Titus at the time of the murder?
It might actually explain why they were both together when they were shot. If they accidentally went onto someone else's property and both were chased off by a guy with a gun, they might very well run in the same direction.
When he was available in the evening of the same day, the detectives took him in for interrogation. As it turned out, Jeff Titus was on a deer hunting trip himself. He had gone off with a friend to an area near Battle Creek, more than 27 miles away from the Fulton Game State area, at the property of an elderly couple. After several hours, Titus and his friend went to Burger King and drove back home. That was the moment when the story started mixing up. The missing gun that belonged to Doug Estes had finally been found, fully loaded. It was with Titus. He said that he had found it about 30 yards away from the crime scene and thought to keep it after wiping it clean, so it could not be traced to someone else and no one could claim it. Although the discovery put Titus under the threat of a major suspicion, it proved that Doug and Jim hadn't killed each other, and someone else was responsible for their death. It definitely raised suspicions, but there was no way to prove if Titus's story was fake. And the most important fact was that he had a rock-solid alibi, so he was cleared. But the detectives knew something was not right. No matter how much they tried, the case seemed to get even more twisted. Ultimately, with no further leads or clues, the case went cold. In the year 2000, the double homicide case of Doug and Jim was reopened, and the case files were transferred to a new team of detectives led by now retired Sergeant Mike Werkema and Detective Mike Brown. They started their investigation of the case by revisiting the neighbors, rechecking the clues, and reconsidering the old suspects. And sure enough, their initial suspicion landed on Bobby Brown. After a lot of back and forth, he was cleared. So, if there were no leads and clues, and the main suspect was cleared, who had killed those men that day? It seemed like a simple answer in hindsight. But the cold case detectives took their time and finally decided that no matter what the initial officers believed, the killer had to be Jeff Titus. More than a decade had passed since the crime. The memories of the people were foggy, and their statements were different. It was proving to be more difficult than they had expected. However, the detectives soon came up with a plausible theory. It suggested that, on November 17, 1990, the day of the murders, Titus had departed from the hunting property he was initially and returned to his own adjoining property near the Fulton State Game Area. This action was driven by his suspicion that unauthorized individuals might have trespassed onto his land. Subsequently, it was believed that he perpetrated the killings before making his way back to the property in the Battle Creek area and returning home with his friend. In 2001, Titus, a married man and a father, found himself under arrest. Following reports from his co-workers at the Veterans Affairs Hospital, they disclosed the same thing, that Titus disliked trespassing hunters during the deer hunting season. According to the detectives, it was a good enough motive. Moreover, his co-workers also alleged that he openly discussed and boasted about the killings. The trial of Jeff Titus was conducted in 2002, led by the now retired Kalamazoo County Assistant Prosecutor Scott Brower. Unfortunately, the passage of time had taken a toll on Titus's alibi witnesses, rendering them unable to provide a testimony in his favor. His neighbor, Helen Knopfs, came to the witness stand, but nothing about the mystery man in his car came up, and the original investigators who had thoroughly cleared Titus of any wrongdoing were not summoned to testify during the trial. So despite the prosecutors not contesting the credibility of Titus's alibi, he was convicted and sentenced to 2 life terms in prison without the possibility of parole. He was incarcerated at Lakeland Correctional Facility in Coldwater, Michigan.
Wow.
But this story was far from over. During Titus's legal defense, led by attorney William Fett, a notable addition to the team was Howard Swabash, a recently retired polygraph examiner from the Michigan State Police. It was revealed that Swabash had been hired as a private investigator by Fett. The court records indicated that Swabash's wife initiated divorce proceedings in January 2002, merely 5 weeks after Titus was charged with murder. The allegations of marital infidelity caused the marital breakdown of their marriage, although the identity of the other woman involved was kept hidden. On the eventful Halloween day of October 31, 2002, 3 months after Titus's conviction by a jury, his wife Julie paid him a visit at Saginaw Prison, accompanied by their daughter and the private investigator Swabash. Julie informed Titus that she intended to file for divorce as they had not gotten along for years. The public records indicated that Swabash and Titus's ex-wife Julie eventually married in Florida in April 2005, merely 3 years after Titus's conviction, marking a surprising turn of events that raised questions about their connection and its...
Completely off topic. Dune is one of those stories that does not translate well to the visual medium because there's too much thought written about.
Potential impact on the case. Retired Sergeant Roy Ballett, who served with the Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Office, played a significant role in the initial investigation that led to Titus being cleared of suspicion in 1990. Ballett, feeling perplexed and dissatisfied with the course of events, confronted Swabash, the investigator, at the Kalamazoo County Courthouse shortly after Titus's conviction. Ballett expressed his disappointment.
If you wanted to try to carry it into a visual medium, you would have to break the screen into multiple perspectives, do them all simultaneously while doing overdubbing for the parts that are vastly important, and the whole time have a narrator sitting there talking about the thoughts of everyone involved, and you wouldn't be able to follow it. It would be nuts.
Questioning why Swabash had not even bothered to contact him to discuss his insights and sentiments regarding the case, particularly if he had taken on the role of investigating to establish Titus's innocence. Neither Ballett nor the other original detective was called as witnesses by the defense. They would have provided crucial testimony regarding Titus's alibi. The confrontation grew heated, with Swabash responding in a confrontational manner and using inappropriate language. He abruptly departed, leaving Ballett to reflect on the encounter. In an interview conducted over the phone from prison,
I kind of feel like anyone who reads Dune and thinks they understand what they read is probably either schizophrenic or narcissistic. They're either lying to you or nuts.
Titus openly wondered if this defense team's private investigator had been truly committed to serving his interests. He said, "It's a shocker, and then I wonder, was he working for me? Was he working for an ulterior motive? I don't know." Titus consistently maintained his innocence throughout the entire course of events. However, it was a pivotal moment when Bruce Wiersama and Roy Ballett, the two detectives involved in the initial investigation, made a public announcement, expressing their willingness to testify in support of Titus's alibi. This development caught the attention of the Innocence Clinic at the University of Michigan, prompting their involvement in the case. Simultaneously, the Michigan Attorney General's office initiated its own independent investigation. As both entities delved into the evidence, a significant revelation emerged. They found that there were several other hunter killings in the area, and it seemed like the work of a serial killer, a crucial detail that had not been disclosed to Titus's defense team during the original trial in 2002. Without any doubt, it raised doubts about any potential connection between Titus and the tragic deaths of Doug and Jim. These findings, coupled with other compelling evidence, prompted the Innocence Clinic to file a motion for a relief of judgment and a new trial on Titus's behalf. But the real turning point came in 2019 when
All right, so the only way that would actually work is if one of these streaming services decided to take on the task as an independent project and then actually follow through with doing the breakdown of the history as one like epic lore drop, like a 2-hour event just for the background lore of what is spice, what is it used for, what does it do, that kind of crap. And then you'd have to have another huge lore dump just to handle the Imperium, and then you'd have to have a third huge lore dump just to deal with Arrakis itself, just the Fremens.
Jacinda Davis, a 47-year-old esteemed producer renowned for her work in the true crime genre, stumbled upon her most captivating story. As she traveled the roads in search of inspiration for her upcoming series, The Killer in Question, her path led her to the heart of Michigan, drawn by the allure of Jack White's famed Third Man Records. Amidst her online exploration, a fascinating case of Jeff Titus caught her attention. Davis's journey intersected with that of Susan Simpson, a 34-year-old former attorney turned podcaster. Simpson, together with Rabia Chaudhry and Colin Miller, were the hosts of the acclaimed podcast Undisclosed. They met, talked together, discussed, and finally, Davis and Simpson found themselves embarking on a collaborative endeavor, uniting their narrative prowess to shed light on the enigmatic Titus case. The forthcoming season of Undisclosed Simpson's podcast, was scheduled to be released on October 26, 2020. After it was aired, the audience was able to delve deep into the intricate details surrounding the controversial conviction and learn some things that were earlier shrouded in mystery. Simultaneously, on November 1st, 2020, viewers tuned in to the debut episode of Killer in Question, a compelling 2-hour documentary that aired on Investigation Discovery. While researching for their podcast and the series, Davis and Simpson found that something in the story did not sit right. Davis said, "I can't think of another case where there are two sets of detectives that don't agree. The original detectives in this case absolutely 100% cleared Jeff Titus and believe he is not guilty. And the cold case team is the opposite. They believe beyond a doubt that they have the right man." During their extensive investigation, they uncovered a significant breakthrough involving two crucial witnesses who had observed a car stuck in a ditch immediately following the gunshots. The fact that Helen Knopfs, a neighbor of Titus, could have easily identified Titus if he was in the car raised more questions. Since the driver turned out not to be him, it left them wondering about the stranger's true intentions and why he was in such a frantic rush to flee the scene. Could he be the elusive murderer they were seeking? To their surprise, the composite sketch that was generated based on Knopf's testimony closely resembled Thomas Dillon, a notorious serial killer active in Ohio. Dillon had a history of targeting hunters, fishermen, and outdoor enthusiasts. In fact, according to FBI reports, Knopfs herself had even identified him from a police lineup when he was eventually apprehended in 1993 for the murders of other hunters. Filled with hope, both Simpson and Davis believed that their stories would encourage individuals with crucial information about the Estes and Bennett murders to step forward. As Simpson pointed out, the mere act of sharing these narratives often leads to a ripple effect, prompting individuals to come forward with valuable insights that can be incorporated into the ongoing investigation. Davis shared their sentiment, believing that people hold untold stories within them. She acknowledged that memories may change over time, with small details sometimes fading away. However, original recollections tend to endure. Naturally, as they delved deeper into the case, both investigators began forming their own opinions regarding Titus's guilt. Simpson, initially unimpressed by the evidence, discovered compelling corroborations that aligned with the initial conclusions of the case's original investigators. The evidence against Jeff Titus simply did not hold up. Since 2019, Titus's case has undergone comprehensive review by the Conviction Integrity Unit within the Michigan State Attorney General's office. As the investigation into this possible wrongful conviction continued, none of the motions submitted by the Innocence Clinic had been granted, leaving Jeff Titus behind bars at the Lakeland Correctional Facility in Coldwater Branch County, Michigan, where he had to serve 2 life sentences. In the face of adversity, the Innocence Clinic made efforts in 2021 to secure Titus's release from the facility due to the COVID-19 outbreak. With a significant number of inmates at Lakeland testing positive for the virus, they sought an exceptional circumstance release on bond. Unfortunately, their plea was administered by a district judge who deemed it unwarranted. Davis and Simpson, the podcasters, were the initial sleuths who stumbled upon a potential link between the 1990 murders and the serial killer Dillon. Their investigative instincts led them to uncover Dillon's dark past, as he had confessed to the chilling murders of 5 hunters and outdoorsmen in Ohio back in 1993. Additionally, Dillon had been a prime suspect in another killing in Pennsylvania and divulged to his cellmate about his involvement in the deaths of 2 hunters in a county that he believed law enforcement would never tie to him. Although Dillon met his demise in prison on October 21, 2011, his connection to the case presented a compelling lead. Driven by their determination, Michigan Innocence Clinic Director David Moran embarked on a mission. Making his way to the Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Office, Moran dedicated an arduous 6 hours meticulously sifting through the archives of the file room. With each document examined, the puzzle pieces began to align, shedding light on a potentially significant breakthrough in the investigation. As Moran continued his search for the truth, he unexpectedly found a special folder hidden deep in the archive. The folder was thin and held around 30 interesting pages. On the outside, it had the words serial killer written lightly in pencil. As Moran read through the pages, he became more and more convinced. These documents contained valuable information about Dylan and could be the key to their success in solving the case. What added another layer of astonishment was the realization that these vital documents had never been disclosed to the defense. It appeared that the prosecutor's office remained oblivious to their existence, leaving an unsettling gap in the knowledge presented during the trial.
Brother.
This discovery ignited a spark of hope within Moran, fueling his belief that their pursuit of justice was on the path to victory. According to Bruce Wiersama, the original detective who compiled the serial killer file, the reports concerning Dylan were included in the case file, and he strongly believed that Dylan was the perpetrator behind the crimes. On the other hand, Mike Werkema, the retired cold case sergeant, stated that he never came across that particular file. He and other detectives on the cold case team claimed to be unaware of the alternate suspect. However, a police report surfaced among court documents indicating that at least one of the cold case detectives had knowledge of the file.
The guy, Titus, that owns property nearby, said he found the gun after the crime. I got the impression that he was implying that they didn't find the gun at the time. That he found it after they had come, got the bodies, did all the thing. He walked over there and there was a loaded gun sitting on the ground, so he wiped it down and kept it. That's
Stuart Fenton, a former Kalamazoo County assistant prosecutor, held a different perspective. He expressed his belief that Titus was responsible for the murders. He firmly believed that the jury made the correct decision and that an innocent man was not wrongfully convicted. In light of the recent allegations, Fenton opined that the newfound information would unlikely have altered the outcome of the original trial. During his time in prison, Titus made a personal vow not to trim his beard until the day he regained his freedom. When the long-awaited call finally came on February 16, 2023, informing him of his impending release, overwhelming emotions flooded over him. "I just started bawling," Titus recalled. Moments later, as he resumed his work on the cards, tears of joy would often well up again, prompting him to momentarily bury his face in his hands. However, Kalamazoo County Prosecutor Jeff Getting said that a decision has not been made about if new charges will be filed. He said, "We're in the process of reviewing the case. It is a complicated factual and legal analysis that will take some time to process." On February 24, 2023, 71-year-old Jeff Titus was released from prison after spending more than 2 decades in prison for Doug Estes and Jim Bennett's 1990 murder case. His conviction was overturned. Titus said that, "It's been 22 years waiting for this day, and it should have never happened in the first place. I'm just overecstatic and overjoyed to finally be out, where I can get out and do something. I want to see my grandkids. I haven't seen them. I want to see them." The moment of liberation from prison brought a flood of emotions that Titus struggled to put into words. As he stepped out into the free world, he was met by a supportive group of individuals who had played pivotal roles in his fight for justice. Attorney Moran, along with dedicated students from the Michigan Innocence Clinic, investigative podcasters Jacinda Davis and Susan Simpson, and the sons of the late Detective Roy Ballard, all stood by Titus's side during his newfound freedom. Detective Ballard, a stalwart believer in Titus's innocence, had passed away in January 2022, but his unwavering support left a lasting impact. While the cold case detective Werkema agreed with the judge's decision to release Titus from prison based on the lack of awareness regarding Dylan, he remained convinced of Titus's guilt. "I still believe Jeff Titus is the killer," Werkema asserted. "Considering his character and the actions he took, I believe he is the perpetrator. He is a dangerous individual, and I have apprehensions about him. I hope that now that he has gained his freedom, he will use it responsibly and make the right choices." With his newfound freedom, Titus engaged in activities he was deprived of for 2 decades. He immersed himself in the company of cherished friends and family, indulging in the food he had long missed during his absence. Rediscovering the joys of life, he enjoyed being with his grandsons, whom he had never met before, and even secured his driver's license. He said, "I can't express enough how grateful I am to be free and have the freedom to simply live again. Titus delighted in feeding deer and songbirds, and his artistic spirit remained alive as he continued to design and draw greeting cards. After almost 2 decades, justice was finally served to Jeff Titus, but the case of Doug Estes and Jim Bennett remained a mystery after the death of the serial killer Thomas Dillon. Do you think Titus was guilty of the crime, or was it the serial killer? Who do you think made a mistake in the investigation? The original investigators or the cold case team? Let us know your thoughts. Also, we would like to hear from you. If you want us to cover a case, please mention it in the comment section below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Until next time, stay safe.
Can't do that.
What's the problem? I got a shooting range or something over there?
Hold up. This is Harvey Freebird. This is an upload from his channel. I'm about to lose my voice. But y'all just went, thank God. Oh, this man won't shut up. Anyway, this is Harvey Freebird's channel. He highlights different interactions with police officers and cops and so far and so forth. Okay, that worked. And this is one of the recent ones that he did that's that he uploaded that is absolutely absurd. So to set the stage here, this gentleman is outside of the municipality, inside the county limits. There are, as far as I've been able to determine, there are no firearm restrictions in the county like there are in the municipality. And so someone that we find out later is an off-duty cop calls in a shots fired type situation over here and identifies a red truck as being involved. Now, this being out in the county pretty much implies that if you wanted to and you had the room to do so, you could go build your own shooting range, and it doesn't have to have any type of legality attached to it. You just build the damn thing. It belongs to you. So if you want to go shoot on it, you can. So when this cop shows up and snatches, like, does this whole, it's just check this out. It makes me absolutely pissed. I lose my shit every time I see it.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This video comes to us from the YouTube channel Rob Huff. This happened in Sussex County, Virginia, and it was uploaded on May the 28th, 2023. And in my opinion, this looks like a clear-cut case of police harassment. This man gets pulled over, and this officer says it's because he heard shots fired in the area. Now, cops must have reasonable suspicion that a traffic violation or a crime has occurred to initiate a traffic stop. Now, this man, Rob Huff, handled this traffic stop beautifully. He knew his rights, and this obviously upset the officer, which led to future harassment and unlawful arrest, which I will get to shortly. Let's get to the video. See y'all later.
What's the problem? I got a shooting range or something over there? My property. Yeah. Listen, I ain't coming with your attitude. I'm filing a complaint that somebody filed. Okay. Do you have a shooting range over there and everything? No, just my property. That's your property? Yeah. Okay, so people currently shooting over there now? What's going on? So we get a call of shots fired in the area. They were in the county. Yeah. Listen, anytime shots fired in the area, you got the ID on you, sir? I haven't committed a crime. Right now, there's an investigation going on, sir.
So what will an ID tell this cop? Is it going to tell him whether or not he has a firearm, whether or not he was driving down the road shooting out of a vehicle or standing in private property shooting at a target? Is it going to tell him whether or not a crime's been committed? Is it going to tell him whether or not this individual is a trustworthy, law-abiding, upstanding citizen? No. It's just going to let him tie him to a location at a given time and let him run back to his masters and go, oh, I got another bump of ID. It's just like crack.
Shots fired in the area, and I need to know who I made contact with.
I haven't committed a crime.
With Sussex Sheriff, I identify myself.
I haven't committed a crime.
Sir, what's your name?
I haven't committed a crime.
What's your name, sir?
My name's Rob. It's a pleasure to meet you, Hudson. Okay. Yes, sir.
All right. So we got to call the shots fired in the area.
I just want to say real quick, for this officer.
Dude, we can have that whole conversation if you want to. We'll make a whole show out of that thing. because there's few things on this planet that really grinds my gears, and one of them is a bad tyrannical cop. And I don't mean tyrannical. Yes, the bad cops that legitimately go in with the intention of breaking the law and all that silly stuff, that's without question, that's diabolical. But what's worse are the morons who have no idea what they're actually supposed to be doing, and instead they run around harassing citizens every single day of their service. So, and then you have situations like ATL had this morning. He goes to go file a complaint. They tell him they've already got the complaint. How can you have the complaint if I haven't filed it? Well, we've got the complaint that you filed last time. That was a complaint against the person who wouldn't take my complaint. That's not the complaint I want to file. I want to file the original complaint I came here to file. Well, we've got your original complaint. No. Go up to the 3rd floor. That's where they take those complaints. You get up there and he won't give you the freaking form to even let you see if it's the right one. So he goes back downstairs to the main office, who tells him that we don't take those kinds of complaints here. You got to do that somewhere else. We're at this location. Okay, we'll go to that location, except where is that location? Oh, I think it's over there. Do you think or do you know? Oh, it's over there, but we've been there and there's no such thing as that thing that they said. It's like they've got an imaginary department inside of their department that they put all the blame on. It's really weird.
To pull this man over and say it's because he heard shots fired would be like pulling him over and saying, we heard that you were breathing. You can't just pull somebody over for no reason, officer.
Do you say you own that land up there? Yes, sir. Okay, how long you live up there or just land?
Just land.
Okay, hold on. Okay, so originally called is shots fired in the area. Anytime shots fired in the area, we got to come. If it's hunting, hunting time, we get a lot of calls. So we have to investigate because we don't know what's going on. I don't know that there's land back there. I don't know that that belongs to you. I don't know that you shooting back there or whatever. I don't know.
Hold on. So there's a road here, and I'm sure somewhere on the other side of this property, there's another road somewhere over there. There might be a few properties between here and there, but he doesn't know that there's land back there between 2 highway roads that he actually has authority on versus all of that land that he should just stay off of because it's private. You don't know about all the private land. You're just not willing to have that discussion. It doesn't exist because you don't have authority over it. Is that what I'm hearing? This is weird.
Know that stuff. So I have to investigate. When a citizen calls, we have to investigate.
Okay.
So that's what I'm investigating. So again, you got your ID on you.
No, it's not illegal.
So I gotta make
I didn't break any laws.
Yeah, so we gotta call a red truck that shots fired in the area.
Okay.
So again, I'm investigating. It's an ongoing investigation. So do
what
you
crime?
have shots fired in the area?
That's a crime?
Yes, sir. Around the roadway and the houses in the area.
Oh,
yes, sir.
No, it was never any.
Okay, I don't know that yet. I haven't went back. The only thing I got is a red truck. So again, I have to
I'm just gonna exercise my Fifth Amendment right at this point.
Okay, that's fine. I need your ID though, sir.
I'm not gonna ID myself. I haven't broken the law.
Step out the vehicle for me, sir.
Well, I'm pretty sure the nothing from Never Ending Story didn't show up and gobble up all of the property between here and the next location that he actually has an authority on. Like the roads, that's where road pirates set up, as I understand it. Legalese is sophisticated jargon because it was written by sophists. So checks out.
I don't consent to any searches or seizures.
I'm not searching this. I need to know, do you have your ID on you? I need to know who I made contact with, sir.
I haven't broken a law. Can you articulate a law that I've broken?
Right now, you must.
Are you sure about that,
sir? Because I have made contact and it's an ongoing investigation.
I'm exercising my Fifth Amendment right.
So you're refusing. So now you're refusing to identify yourself to me.
You haven't articulated a crime.
It's an ongoing investigation of shots fired in the area, sir.
It's not a crime.
This is another pet peeve I have, is when cops get locked into this jargon of speaking in investigation ease. The fact that there is an investigation taking place does not give you my license. Now, he was driving. He was in a vehicle. I don't know if he's on private property or public yet, but he was actually in a vehicle. So there is some level of veracity here, although he still has to name That's why I really like our local cops here. When they pull you over, they walk up to your door and say, my name is such and such. I am this rank. I work at this police department. The reason I pulled you over is. Fantastic. I'm glad you told me.
It's in the county.
You're missing the whole point, sir.
I am not giving up my Fifth Amendment right.
So
that
land belongs to you.
Right.
That land belongs to you.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any backstops behind any shooting that's going on back there?
I'm not going to answer any questions.
Okay, that's fine. Give me 1 second.
Now we're going to investigate your
Can I see your
property
supervisor?
because why?
He is the supervisor, sir.
Can I see your supervisor? I allow people to hunt on that property as well. So when they're hunting, is that a crime?
How much land you got?
I'm not going to answer any questions.
Okay. And why? Why? I'm just going to answer.
Because I have a Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Okay. So
you swore an oath to uphold the Constitution, didn't you?
Sure did.
Can you articulate to me what the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution is?
Yeah, I can, but I'm not gonna because you obviously know it. Okay.
Well,
so this is my question.
First, second, and third?
All right.
I bet you don't.
If you want to assert your rights, I have no problem with that.
I'm being illegally detained at this point.
Okay. Well, we're in the middle of an investigation.
Of what crime? It's not a crime. You can't even articulate a crime. I have no obligation to assist you in your investigation. You know?
Okay. So my question to you is this: you want to ask me a bunch of questions?
That is a trick. When they walk up to your car and say, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Anything you say will make you guilty. Anything. Even saying no makes you look incompetent. So there is no proper answer for that. The only proper response is, why did you pull me over? Answer their question with a question.
You don't want to answer any of my questions.
Yeah, that's
why
your
are you
job.
being difficult?
I'm a citizen in America.
Because I don't have to serve your freaking purpose, bro. I have every right to be on my own property. I have every right to come and go as I please. You might be able to get my license if you pull me over on a public roadway. But if you're not a game warden trying to verify whether or not I have a hunting license, you're going to have to pack this one up and take it off somewhere else, bro. Y'all go investigate. Leave me alone.
And we have the Constitution. I know
Okay,
y'all don't
but that doesn't
believe in
answer
that
why
anymore.
you're being so difficult.
I don't have to answer any of your questions, officer.
Okay, I just want to know what your issue is. Why you don't want to talk to us? That's
I don't
my
like
question.
police. I'm sorry. I think you guys are tyrants.
Okay.
Yeah. If y'all actually upheld the Constitution like you swore an oath to do, then yeah, I would answer questions. But y'all don't do that anymore. You're fucking tyrants anymore, man. No offense to you. I mean, I'm sure you might be a good dude. I know. I don't know. I know y'all are sitting here wanting to ID me and violate my constitutional rights.
Okay, but getting your ID is not violating your rights.
Yes, it certainly is. That's the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution.
Fourth Amendment, papers and effects. Papers and effects. That falls under either paper, which it would be or used to be, or effects, which is just generally the shit in your pockets.
How is it? Because I don't have to have any searches or seizures. You can't search or seize anything unless I've been suspected of a crime.
Okay.
Am I suspected of a crime?
I'll leave that up to my partner, sir.
There you go. You got to articulate a crime, and I'd be happy to ID myself if you can articulate a crime that I've broken or done something wrong.
Okay. Well, technically, we have enough to stop you for the incident that we're investigating, and technically, if you want to get into the aspects of the law, you're just driving down the road. We have a right to see your driver's license registration. There's Supreme Court case law on that.
Yeah, if I violated the law.
Okay.
What's the law? What's the law that I violated?
Operating a vehicle on the roads of the Commonwealth.
If that's against the law?
It's not against the law.
Well, then what the fuck do you need my ID for?
Once you have been stopped for a reasonable suspicion, you don't need
suspicion of what crime? You can't articulate a crime.
Didn't he already tell you that?
He didn't articulate a crime.
Okay. But a crime is not reasonable suspicion. You need to talk to a better lawyer.
I'm talking to talking. I'm just.
But a crime is not reasonable suspicion.
He's correct. A crime is not reasonable suspicion. A crime is not reasonable suspicion. But you are supposed to have reasonable suspicion of an articulable crime that has been, or is about to be committed. Shots fired in a county environment is not a crime in the first place. So Why are we here having this conversation at all? I don't know.
RAS, reasonable articulable suspicion. If you can articulate to me reasonable articulable suspicion, I will be happy to ID myself.
If you want to play the reasonable person standard, we'll play that. Okay. So we're responding to a shots fired call. We have a witness that sees your truck driving from that area, and now we're talking to you. That's reasonable suspicion according to Supreme Court.
What's the crime?
All day.
What's the crime?
Shots fired.
That's
We're investigating it. Well, no, I don't
There
have
you go.
No, I don't have to have a crime to stop you. I don't
Yes,
have to have
you
a crime
do.
to ID you. I don't have to have a crime to talk to you.
You have to have a crime. If I've done something wrong, I will ID myself. You tell me what I've done wrong,
Show
and I will ID
me
myself.
where in a law book anywhere that reasonable suspicion equals a crime.
I do believe that one hovers all around the Fourth Amendment over there, because it has to do with whether or not they can stop and detain, affect you in any way, honestly. And by the original reading of the Fourth Amendment, they're not supposed to be able to search you for drugs until after they have actually kind of verified that you've committed some sort of crime, because it's in your personal effects. You know, assuming you don't have a suitcase labeled drugs. And even then it would be questionable.
It does,
because it all comes back to the reasonableness of the idea, right? If we're going to stop and search you, we have to have a reasonable, articulable suspicion. So if you can't figure out how to say it, stop searching immediately.
This is a Terry stop?
It doesn't.
Is this Terry v. Ohio? Is this a Terry stop?
Okay. No, I don't think it's a Terry
There
stop.
you go.
Okay.
Am I free to leave?
So this is the rule. I'm going to print out the laws of Sussex County. I'm going to put it on that fence. It is regulations that have to follow. We are going to report it. They are going to come and investigate your area that you're shooting over there. Again, I'm going to take a picture. I'm going to buy the camera right here.
I don't want you to trespass on my property.
Listen, sir.
Okay.
Again, shots was fired in their area. Their homes right there. You can't shoot within a certain feet of the homes. So if you are in violation of that, you will.
If you are driving on a public highway, road, or anything maintained by public money, or are operating a registered vehicle on private property that has any form of public access in the area of public access, right? So if he was off over here on his own freaking place doing his own thing and he left and they pulled him over as soon as he pulled out on the road, they can get his license, registration type stuff, run his freaking plate. You get most of that information anyway. But I haven't been able to figure out exactly where this guy is stopped at. I get the impression that he was going to his truck and they approached him as he got in or something along those lines, but it does vaguely resemble the side of the road.
Will be charged. Okay.
There's still no crime.
Yes, it is a crime. You can't shoot within 30 feet of a home, sir.
So how many feet was I in?
You're good to go, sir. Have a good day.
Thank you.
So it's obvious that Sussex County sheriffs are harassing this man, and the harassment continued after he was let go from this illegal detention. As you can read here, what he had in the description of the video, it says, "Police let me go from this illegal detention only to arrest my father for trespassing on his land. I told them they were not welcome to enter. My nephew called me for help, and I was arrested for trespassing on my property. I was ultimately cited for cussing in public on his private property." And then he makes a call out to the civil rights lawyer, lackluster, and honor your oath. I'm not as big as those guys, but I will help you get your word out. All the contact information will be in the description on Rob Huff's channel and the Sussex County, Virginia Sheriff's Department. It definitely sounds like Rob Huff has a lawsuit, in my opinion. Of course, I am not an attorney and this is not legal advice, but good luck to you, Rob. Anyways, hope everybody enjoyed the video. I'll see y'all later.
Still no crime.
Yes, it is a crime. You can't shoot within 30 feet of a home, sir.
So how many feet was I in?
You're good to go, sir. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Yep.
Next one. All right. Y'all been waiting long enough for the Buford Pusser one. I'm gonna go ahead and link it up.
People just really didn't.
There was a few people asking about that first. I didn't expect it to take this long to get to it. I thought it was the third one. I think sometimes it doesn't save when I go and change the when I go rearrange it. You know? I don't know. That's the impression I get anyway. We got the Duke of Dankness with his whopping 6,840 subscribers ish. Y'all get a chance. Y'all go tell him Sasquatch sent you. He's got a bunch of stuff over there too. He does wrong button. He does pretty decent work. I watched a different one. I didn't watch this one because I kind of wanted it to be actual original reaction type. So I can't tell you exactly how good it is, but the other one I watched was pretty good. And it was something to do with, I think it was the girls on the tracks.
You know, he's the sheriff of the county when he walked in. Yes, usually if there's any trouble before it started, he'd tell me he was the sheriff of the county. But once or twice, some of them didn't pay no attention to that, and that's when they, especially one occasion I know of it, 5 or 6 of them jumped him. And he broke one of them's leg and took about 3 of them to jail.
Hello. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you took a really big stick, put it in the hands of a really big man, and then sent him off after a bunch of organized crime syndicates? Well, if you have, then you're in luck, because we happen to have the answer.
Yes,
in this
sir.
episode of Absolute Legends, we're going to take a look at a man who held a line against the lawless, a man who didn't back down in the face of overwhelming odds, a man of principle who stood up against those who had none. We're talking about the bull himself, Sheriff Buford Hayes Pusser.
Tell me that man doesn't have an absolutely brilliant freaking accent. Did you hear that thing? Pusser. Pusser. Or there was a roll at the end of that thing. I can't even. Pusser. Wrong button.
I say pure and dare.
I mean, really, if I found another really cool story. It's about the smallest Marine. Smallest Green Beret. He was like 4'3" or some crap. Absolute boss. A unit, a total unit. It's a cool story.
The turbulent life of Buford Pusser would begin in Finger McNairy County in Tennessee on December 12th, 1937. Young Buford was a soft-spoken and timid child, born to Carl and Helen Pusser. He was the youngest of 3 children, and they grew up together on a small farm during the Great Depression. Buford's father, Carl, didn't believe in government handouts, and instilled in each of his children a strong work ethic and sense of justice. Carl Pusser also served as the police chief of Adamsville, something his youngest son would eventually go on to emulate. Buford's mother, Helen, claimed that her son was a very timid boy who clung tightly to her side. He refused to go to school or leave the house for any trips because he was afraid of getting lost. Instead, he would stay home and pray. Once in high school, things began to change for Buford. He grew to a height of 6 foot 6 inches tall and weighed in at 250 pounds. He excelled at basketball and football and became quite popular amongst his peers. After high school, he decided to join the Marines, intending to make a career out of it. It would have meant a tour of duty in the Vietnam War. This was never meant to be. Just 4 months into his career in the Marines, while still in training, Buford Pusser was medically discharged due to persistent asthma attacks. After being discharged, Pusser would return home to Adamsville, his pride and ego wounded by the rejection he'd experienced in the military. His mother, who was a pious woman, told him that the Lord had a place for him in life, but that it just wasn't in the military. She advised him to be patient. Although his mother's advice helped ease the embarrassment, Pusser decided to go out for a night on the town anyway. He headed out to the Plantation Club, which lay just over the Mississippi border. It was well known for its rough clientele. The club was owned by W.O. Hathcock, who was in attendance on the night the Pusser arrived. Pusser was no stranger to the kind of carry-on that proliferated around places like the Plantation.
When this is all said and done, I'm going to go back to this episode. I'm going to get a supercut of every time he says the word Pusser. And I'm just going to upload it and not explain anything to anyone. You will be the only ones who know why.
Club, as he had witnessed a murder while at the Irish Club just inside the Tennessee border when he was only 16 years of age. He watched a heavy-set woman follow an old sailor out of the club, withdraw a claw hammer from underneath her apron, and proceed to bash him repeatedly in the back of the head. Disturbed by the event, Pusser and his friends decided to leave, but as they were heading out the front door, they ran into a deputy sheriff, who looked down at the dying man before asking what had happened. The woman who had just smashed the man's skull in with a hammer told the deputy sheriff that he had suffered a heart attack, and they both laughed. This was Buford Pusser's first encounter with the state line mob.
I want this guy to narrate my life while I'm going through it. And I'm going to change my last name to Pusser. That's going to make everything great.
Which was loosely associated with a group of other crime syndicates that composed the Dixie Mafia. Although Pusser had been greatly disturbed by the brutality he just witnessed, he was far more disturbed by the actions of the deputy sheriff who had covered up a blatant murder.
This guy I want to walk
on the night Pusser entered the plantation club, he was immediately lured back into the back rooms to play craps. He spent some time in there and actually did quite well, going on to win a large sum of money. Although he was in good spirits, other people weren't too happy with his success, prompting one of the dealers to swap out the dice. Pusser caught the man in the act and demanded that he resort back to the previous set. Pusser was immediately surrounded by 4 large men, who dragged him away from the gaming table and proceeded to beat the head off him with a mixture of batons and knuckle dusters. While lying on the floor of the club in a semi-conscious state, Pusser felt one of his assailants rifle through his pockets and take all of his winnings, along with all the contents of his wallet. After he'd been stripped of all valuables, the men...
He might have been okay with it if they hadn't mugged him. I mean, it's one thing to tote home an ass whooping, and it's another thing to tote home an ass whooping being robbed.
Picked him up, carried him out the front door, and dumped him into the rain-soaked night. Pusser lay there in the rain until he recovered enough strength to drag himself to his car, and then he drove himself to the medical center in Salmer, where it took 192 stitches to close up the many lacerations about his face and head. After he'd been fixed up and received a chiding from his mother, a seething Buford Pusser decided to seek full-time employment rather than seek revenge on W.O. Hathcock, who he believed had ordered the attack on him. Pusser gained employment quickly, working for a spell as a mortician's assistant at the funeral home in Adamsville, which led to him moving to Chicago and enrolling in mortician school in 1957. While living in Chicago, he and 2 hometown friends found work at a paper mill. And in an unusual move, Pusser also became a professional wrestler on the side. This is where he picked up the nickname Buford the Bull. During his wrestling career, he became somewhat well known for wrestling and beating a live grizzly bear. Pretty sure it would have been a black bear cub, but a grizzly bear sounds much more impressive. It was at one of those professional wrestling bouts that he met a beautiful blonde woman by the name of Pauline Mullins, who was a divorcee with 2 young children. Buford and Pauline would go on to marry on December 5th, 1959, only 7 days before Pusser's 22nd birthday. I couldn't even tie my shoes at 22. The couple would enjoy marriage bliss for less than a month.
That's why they make
before law enforcement turned up on the doorstep of the Pusser home in the late evening of January 4th, 1960. 2 detectives were there to serve an extradition order from the Corinth magistrate in Mississippi. The summons was for the immediate arrest of Buford Pusser on the grounds of the attempted murder of W.O. Hathcock. Apparently, 1 week before his wedding, on December 13, 1959, Pusser and 2 of his friends had paid a visit to the plantation club, where Pusser had beaten the ever-loving crap out of Hathcock and taken back the winnings that Hathcock had stolen. Hathcock had claimed that Pusser and his 2 friends had robbed him at gunpoint and then beaten him nearly to death. A few weeks later, they were put on trial by District Attorney N.S. Sweet, referred to by Carl Pusser as being so crooked he has to screw his britches on every morning. Sick burn. W.O. Hathcock, his wife Loressi.
Motherfucker's so crooked he's got to screw his britches on in the morning. Damn. Yeah, this is the story from Waukita. This is the actual real life events that took place that The Rock didn't even really try too hard to emulate at all. He just wanted to be cool.
Sheriff Coleman and his deputy and several other corrupt law enforcement officers testified against Pusser and his friends. The only evidence presented by the prosecution was W.O. Hadcock's testimony and Sheriff Coleman's description of Pusser being a known troublemaker, despite the fact that Pusser had never been arrested on any previous charge. Sweet accused him of seeking out revenge and that he had driven hundreds of miles in order to do so. Despite providing 6 eyewitnesses that testified Buford Pusser had never left the state of Illinois, and his time card proving that he had been in work at the time of the supposed attack on W.O. Hadcock, he was scoffed at by the prosecution and repeatedly condemned. Despite this, the jury retired and returned 2 hours later to deliver the verdict of not guilty. This verdict was proof to Pusser that the average citizen was tired of the corruption and the power that the state-line mob held over law enforcement. A few months after his trial, Buford Pusser returned to Adamsville with his family, which was now going to be 1 member larger. To his great joy, Pusser found out that Pauline was pregnant with their daughter Dwana, who would be born in 1961. Pusser settled back in Adamsville and resumed his career as a professional wrestler, but he soon realized that the wage he made from professional wrestling was not sufficient to support a large family, so he decided to seek out a real job. His father Carl, who at the time was still serving as police chief of Adamsville, recommended that Buford take over, as long as the town board approved. Pusser enjoyed a few quiet months as police chief, dealing only with local teenage drag racers and drunks. But after a while he became restless and wished to expand on his duties. He applied for the local district's constable office and was accepted. This would mean he now had to deal with the local bootleggers and illegal whiskey stills as well. During the course of his new duties, he would often have to deal with the local sheriff, whom he didn't like. The local sheriff was a man by the name of James Dickey, who was known to be on the take from the state-line mob. At this time, the mob had a lucrative operation going on that involved bootlegging, prostitution, and rigged gambling. The way Pusser saw it, he had no choice but to run for the position of McNairy County Sheriff if he wanted to do any real good, and he did just that in 1964. Buford Pusser ran on the promise to clean up McNairy County, saying on his stump speech that he would clean up the corruption and violence and make McNairy County a decent place to live and raise a family. Pusser quickly became the odds-on favorite to win, despite being only 24 years of age, in a staunch Republican and an overwhelmingly Democrat area. Ironically, during his campaign, he received a bribe in the mail from Louise Hadcock, owner of the Shamrock Motel, another state-line mob operation.
You ever seen the movie Walking Tall, brother? That whole story was based on a real guy. We're listening about him.
Louise had recently shot and killed her husband in what she claimed was self-defense, but what was widely known to be murder. 2 days before the election actually took place, the incumbent sheriff James Dickey was killed in a car crash. Many believed it to be mob retribution and a warning to the incoming sheriff. No proof of foul play was ever discovered, but it seemed very suspect given that he was on the take from the mob and was now projected to lose badly to the young challenger. Regardless, Pusser went on to win the election in a landslide and was sworn in on September 1st, 1964. He was the youngest sheriff in Tennessee history. At just 26 years of age, the big man wasted no time delivering on his promise to clean up the state line, identifying Louise Hadcock, owner of the Shamrock Motel, and Charles Towhead White, owner of the White Iris, as primary players in the state line mob. Pusser had a problem, however. The rest of law enforcement was totally compromised. Officers regularly indulged in the prostitution, gambling, and robbery that was prolific throughout the region. And despite how popular he may have been amongst the honest citizenry and the criminal underworld, Pusser was a marked man. But the new sheriff was also a determined man, absolutely fixed on his mission to clean up the county. He regularly did circuits of the state line, sometimes going days without sleep. For years, places like the Shamrock Motel treated criminals very well, but preyed upon innocent tourists. Many out-of-state Americans were lured into the Shamrock for the 49-cent country ham breakfast, only to be beaten and robbed by state-line thugs. This was a frequent reoccurrence, and until Pusser took the reins, absolutely nothing was ever done about it. Even though he had always been big, Buford Pusser never liked to push other people around. In fact, during his time at grade school, bullies would often make fun of him because of his size and shy demeanor. The gentle giant would always take it in good humor.
Hey,
but if one of those...
If you know any Scottish people, get them to say purple burglar. It is the most hilarious thing to watch them fight their own tongue and lose.
The same bullies happened to pick on a smaller kid, Pusser would turn beast mode and drop the hammer on them. He'd been brought up by his father to have a good sense of justice, and by 26, he had the makings of the perfect sheriff needed to clean up McNairy County. In his early days as sheriff, Pusser didn't even carry a gun or wear a uniform. Instead, he carried around a large stick, which started off as merely a tree branch. Several people...
All right, so stay with me here. So San Joaquin's tooling around out there and finds this guy. No uniform, no gun, no proof that he's a cop except he drives around in this big-ass K5 Blazer with lights on it. And he's going to get out with his stick and tell you to give you your ID.
People advised him that a badge and uniform would prevent a lot of the hassle he endured, but the wolf in sheep's clothing routine worked perfectly for the area. Threats on Pusser's life began to mount, and he soon suffered injuries from the resulting attacks. Within weeks of taking office, the new sheriff was stabbed in an altercation with a knife-wielding assassin. Several more attempts would be made on his life, and by the end of it, he would have received 8 gunshot wounds and 7 stab wounds and would have killed at least 2 of his attackers. Not surprisingly, he eventually picked up a gun, his weapon of choice, a .41 caliber Magnum. By the time Pusser stood for re-election in 1966, he had more than earned the enthusiastic support of the electorate, but his wife Pauline was struggling with the constant threats and looming violence that arose from her husband taking on a deeply entrenched and politically protected crime syndicate. Pusser would go on to win re-election with ease, and once again the bribes from Louise Hadcock and Towhead White started to flow in. Towhead White, who was now regarded as the Al Capone of Alcorn County, had hooked up with Louise Hadcock as a strategic move to increase his power. On February 1st, 1966, the McNairy County Sheriff's Office received a call from 2 young tourists out of Illinois. They claimed that while staying at the Shamrock Hotel, Louise Hadcock had held them at gunpoint and had stolen a purse. Sheriff Buford Pusser obtained a search warrant and, joined by 2 of his deputies, P.D. Plunk and Jim Moffett, headed straight for the state line. Pusser wasn't taking any chances. He knew what Hadcock was capable of. Hadcock and Towhead White had major beef with Pusser at this stage because of his successes destroying whiskey stills all over the county. Both criminals had enjoyed great profits from bootlegging the illegal whiskey in the past, and it was a major source of their income. As a result of Sheriff Pusser's pressure, Towhead White was forced to move his illegal whiskey operation out of McNairy County and into Tashomingo County in Mississippi. This move would end up backfiring for the Al Capone of Alcorn County, as in 1965, Sheriff James Bishop of Tashomingo County, along with federal agents, arrested Towhead White on the charge of running an illegal whiskey still in the state of Mississippi. Towhead White was thus sent to federal prison in Alabama, so he was out of the way when Pusser and his deputies headed to the Shamrock to arrest Hadcock on February 1st. The Shamrock Motel was spread out into multiple sections. Hadcock's office lay just through the lobby and the rear of the building. When Pusser and his deputies found her, she was sitting in her office with a drink in her hand, and after being confronted, she asked to speak with Sheriff Pusser alone. Pusser agreed, and she brought him through a side door that led into the bedroom she used when staying over at the motel. Once through the door, Hadcock produced a .38 pistol and spun to face the sheriff. It is not known whether she pulled the weapon from her pocket or received it from her dresser like she had done when killing her husband. She screamed, "I'm gonna kill you," and pulled the trigger. Pusser dove onto the bed to his left, the bullet narrowly missing his head. Hadcock readjusted her aim and pulled the trigger again, but this time the weapon misfired. Pusser shot back, pulling the trigger a total of 3 times. The first bullet struck Hadcock in the shoulder, spinning her around. The second bullet tore a trench across her chest and neck, and finally the third bullet struck her in the head. She fell to the floor, still holding her drink. Even though Pusser was cleared of the shooting after the investigation that followed, some have claimed that Hadcock never actually fired at Pusser at all. They claim that it was the sheriff who fired first, then arranged for the scene afterwards to make it look like it had been self-defense. I think that's unlikely. If he'd wanted to kill Hadcock, then why would he be bringing 2 deputies along with him?
So what they're saying is my man straight Pulp Fiction that shit. Blah, 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 blah. Pap, pap. Take your time, folks. Make sure you kill him when you shoot.
And why did Hatcock want to be alone with him in the first place? It's worth remembering that Hatcock had killed her husband in much the same manner as she attempted to kill Pusser. I reckon she fancied her chances. Also, she was so drunk that her reaction speed would have been way down, her aim would have been way off, and her judgment would have been about as good as mine was after a night on the juice. In my humble opinion, this was simply a terminal case of Dutch courage. When considering this scenario, we must also take into account the number of
terminal
shots
case of
Pusser
Dutch
fired.
courage. I like
3
that.
in total. And given the grouping, they would have had to have been fired in quick succession. That's panic fire to me. If he'd fired first, surely he would have aimed properly. Anyway, the news of Louise Hatcock's death didn't go down too well with our business partner and reluctant lover, Towhead White.
Hey, Tiffany.
He and a fellow inmate by the
in,
name
girl.
of French would escape from minimum security prison on December 11, 1966. About a month after the escape, Sheriff Buford Pusser attempted to stop a speeding car on Highway 45, a light green Chrysler with Mississippi plates. 2 men were inside. As Pusser approached the passenger door of the car, he was shot 3 times and left to die. The Chrysler sped away from the scene. Somehow, Pusser was able to get back in his car and drive himself to the hospital
unit.
Selmer.
That's how.
Again, despite being shot full of holes.
That's how.
3 days later, on January the 5th, 1967, Towhead White turned himself in. He knew that the law were after him. During the next 7 months, Towhead White orchestrated Pusser's assassination from his prison cell. He made arrangements with Kursky Nix Jr. to carry out the hit. In the early hours of August 12, 1967, a phone call was placed to the home of Sheriff Pusser, telling him that there was emergency somewhere out on the New Hope Road, which lay down in the southern part of the county. Pusser jumped out of bed to get ready, and his wife Pauline decided that she wanted to go with him, maybe due to the threatening phone calls making her feel unsafe. It was still dark when Sheriff Pusser and Pauline left their home in Adamsville, heading south towards New Hope Road. What Pusser didn't know was that a dark-coloured 1965 Cadillac carrying 3 men was lurking just behind the New Hope Church, which lay on the way to the scene of the reported emergency. As the sheriff drove past, the Cadillac pulled out from behind the church and sped after the couple with its lights turned off. According to Sheriff Pusser, as he was approaching the bridge up ahead, the Cadillac suddenly switched on its lights and raced up alongside them. The darkness was suddenly lit up by bright muzzle flashes and loud cracks as the 3 men inside the Cadillac opened fire on the sheriff's car. Pauline, who was sitting in the passenger seat, was struck in the head and killed instantly. Quickly reacting to the ambush, Pusser put his foot to the floor and pulled out in front of the attackers. After a few miles of breakneck speed, the Cadillac disappeared behind him, and the sheriff figured that they must have veered off to make their getaway. Pusser immediately pulled over to the side of the road so he could check on his wife Pauline. After confirming that she was dead, the grief-stricken sheriff didn't even get time to process what had just happened, before the Cadillac re-emerged from the darkness and opened fire again. Sheriff Pusser was hit several times, one of the rounds blowing his lower left jaw off and taking half of his face with it. The sheriff slumped over and fell to the floor of his car, and thinking him dead, the driver of the Cadillac gunned the engine, and with screeching tires it tore off into the night, leaving behind a badly wounded Buford Pusser. Despite the state of shock and horrific injuries, Pusser somehow managed to reach for the car radio and call out for help. With his jaw shattered and dangling, he was unable to form words, but the dispatcher knew it was him and that he was in trouble, so was quick to send out help. Sheriff Buford Pusser was rushed to Baptist Memorial Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. He would spend 18 days in that hospital, missing his own wife's funeral. Pusser would also undergo 16 surgeries over the coming years to restore some functionality to his jaw and reconstruct his face. The one and only Elvis Presley, who was an admirer of Pusser's, paid for all his medical bills.
I think homie starts drinking when he starts filming, because that Elvis Presley line wasn't quite accurate. Hear that one again.
To his jaw and reconstruct his face. The one and only Elvis Presley, who was an admirer of Pusser's, paid for all his medical bills. After he recovered well enough, Pusser stated that he could identify 2 of the shooters, but wasn't sure about the third man, that being Kursky Nix Jr. Later, he would flat out refuse to identify Nix at all. Some took this to mean that the sheriff planned to take care of Nix himself. There's no doubt in my mind that Sheriff Pusser knew it was Towhead White who had orchestrated the hit. They were mortal enemies, and it had occurred only 7 months after the shooting of Louise Hadcock. Pusser had also been made aware that Kursky Nix Jr. and 2 other men had stayed in the...
All right, so like I said, he does a really good job of laying out all the facts and doing the whole thing, right? The only complaint I would possibly have with this is the monotone, and I know he's going for like gravity, right? He's being serious and not making jokes. He's just laying it out for you, true crime style. I get that, but it's sort of a little too monotone. I don't know. Maybe it's the accent. Who knows?
The Shamrock Motel the night before the attack. Even if Pusser identified Kursky Nix Jr., the State Line mob would have no shortage of alibis for the killers. 1 year after the ambush, Towhead White was released from prison in September of 1968. And just over 6 months later, on April 4th, 1969, Towhead pulled into the El Rey Motel in Corinth, Mississippi, with the estranged wife of Barry Smith Jr. in tow. Unfortunately for him, Smith was part owner of the El Rey Motel and was actually standing outside when they arrived. The official version of the story is that upon seeing Barry Smith, Towhead drew a gun and started shooting.
Hey, Mark Schumann, welcome
Smith
back.
ran back into the office to retrieve his own weapon,
bud.
before running back outside to return fire, killing Towhead.
Well, he pissed off the mob. The mob pissed him off. He beat up the mob, beat him up. He beat up the mob. The mob shot at him. He killed some of the mob. The mob shot him some more, and he kills more of the mob.
Towhead while he was still sitting in the driver's seat of his car. And some even say that Sheriff Pusser paid Smith to kill Towhead, but all of it is unsubstantiated. Barry Smith Jr. was not charged with the shooting of Towhead White. Those in law enforcement were so relieved that White was dead and his reign of terror was over that they didn't see much point in investigating any claims other than those of Smith. The shooting was ruled as self-defense, and nothing else was ever done. In 1971, Kursky Nix Jr. was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Frank Corso, a New Orleans grocery executive, while Nix was breaking into his home. In 1987, Nix was also convicted of the murder for hire killing of Judge Vincent Sherry and his wife Margaret in Biloxi, Missouri. His co-conspirator, Biloxi Mayor P. Halat, had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars from Nix and blamed the judge. Nix would be charged and convicted of orchestrating the crime from prison and would be confined to isolation for the remainder of his life. As of the recording of this video, Nix still resides in prison. He is 78 years of age. In the years that followed, a movie based on Pusser's experience would be released. 1973's Walking Tall is a dramatized version of the events of Sheriff Buford Pusser's life. It was a low-budget movie, but worth a watch. On the 21st of August, 1974, Buford Pusser returned from Memphis, Tennessee, after just signing the contract to play himself in the sequel to Walking Tall. He had just left the McNairy County Fair in Selmer and was headed back home to Adamsville, a journey of only 12 miles. As he was known to do, he was driving his 1-year-old Corvette at high speed when he suddenly lost control of the vehicle and slid 300 feet across the westbound lane, straight into an embankment. Buford Pusser was thrown out the open roof of his Corvette as it exploded into flames. He was killed on impact, suffering a broken neck and many other gruesome injuries. To add to the horrific tragedy of Buford's last moments, his young daughter Dwana was traveling with friends just behind him when he crashed.
Can you imagine this guy describing your gunfight death? Unless she hid, hold on. Unless she hid quietly beside the last remnants of her last bit of cover, the bullets fell around her endlessly, coming until she was finally struck bodily. I can't do the accent, but I could do an awesome narration voice. Mob hits.
Fortunately, she witnessed the entire aftermath. Sheriff Buford Hayes Pusser would be buried in Adamsville Cemetery next to his wife Pauline, He was only 36 years of age. In the years that followed, several conspiracy theories built up around the life and death of Sheriff Pusser. The lore took on a life of its own, applying to an already incredible story exaggerated details that were just not
He's
necessary.
either Scottish or Irish.
He didn't hunt down and kill all the men involved in his wife's murder. That's just Hollywood. Kirsky Nix Jr. is actually still alive and behind bars. Carmine R. Gagliardi died of an overdose in prison. And George Albert McGann, who was a prolific gambler and in debt to very serious people, was killed in a poker game on September 30th, 1970. However, in regards to Towhead White, it is somewhat plausible that Pusser was involved. We'll just never know for sure. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that there is a group of people who believe that Buford Pusser was some kind of criminal mastermind, who along with his father Carl ran a criminal empire that was tied in with the state line mob. This conspiracy theory portrays a Buford Pusser that is so far removed from the known character of the man that it doesn't hold water. The fact is that the people of Adamsville and McNairy County, who knew Sheriff Pusser personally, always sang his praises at every opportunity. McNairy County still celebrates the life of the heroic sheriff to this day, holding a Buford Pusser festival every May. Pusser was a man who liked to walk tall, but he also never backed down, not even when it almost cost him his life. He did things his own way and on his own terms. He had a strong and deeply ingrained sense of justice and hated to see the bully prevail. He served the people of McNairy County diligently for many years and suffered great tragedies in order to do so. His refusal to back down, coupled with his unrelenting drive to clean up the criminal syndicates that had brought his county to ruin, won him a lot of favor across the entire United States. His unwavering sense of duty and justice made him an American hero, and that legacy would go on to be noticed all around the world. One thing is for certain.
What's up, Soy? I
The
see you in a
Vietnamese
minute.
are very lucky he had
How you been
asthma.
doing, bud?
It would have taken a damn anti-tank missile to put a stop to that fella. Well, I think that brings us to the end of this episode. To those of you who have made it this far, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm very grateful for you spending time with me here today.
All right.
I really appreciate it. And
we're going to go
as
back
usual,
to
take care and God bless.
6.
I knew Buford Pusser.
Oh, hey, look, it's Joe Scott. That
6 bad designs. Are we going to check that one out, or do we want to go with permanently lost media? Anton Petrov or Astil Doherty Productions? Pick one. Pick one. Yeah, no, it's well enough, dude. Like, shit happens, life sucks, we deal with it, we move on and make a YouTube channel, have content about it, and eventually we fade off into obscurity. I'm thinking about changing my name. Thinking about changing my name to the Unseen when I close this channel. Gypsy and the Vanilla Gorilla. Oh, yes, sir. That's the only person I would have approved of using the snowflake footage. And you picked, I almost picked the very same face, the one where he's got his nose all scrunched up. He's so ugly, he's cute in that scene. I love it. It's great. Change it to Law Dog. You're Batman. All right, fine. We'll do the geoengineering and save the rest for another day, I suppose. I don't know. We'll see.
other YouTuber that also.
All right, so this is Anton Petrov, and he started as a different channel. What was the name of that channel? Something real. Oh yeah, what the math? He started like basically he does physics, is what it comes down to. Where's the thing? Why don't? All right, fine. I'll do it over here since you're being an asshole. Welcome to Chilling with Sasquatch, where the technical issues are part of the show. Do the thing with the thing. There's the link. Y'all want to go check him out. He does especially like stellar type stuff, you know, comments on James Webb telescope footage. He goes over stuff to do with things that have been discovered out there in the great vasty outside. So when he takes note of some geoengineering process, it kind of makes me wonder exactly how much there is to know about it. And I think he's standing there in front of Thunderfoot. Is that Thunderfoot? I don't know who that is. Let's find out.
Talks about stuff I talk about. Haha, just kidding. He's actually pretty cool. Anyway, recently he made this video that you can find in the description with a somewhat direct title: The Absolute Worst Climate Change Solution Possible. And you can sort of see the solution right here in the thumbnail, slowing down the Earth. And just to spoil his video in case you're not going to be watching it, he basically explains that it's not a good idea and what would happen to Earth if we did slow it down. The effects would probably be quite the opposite. And then I suddenly realized, wait a second, I've been actually collecting a lot of these strange, unusual ideas and explanations on what we can do scientifically to prevent climate
this dude
change
is absolutely
for basically
brilliant,
several years now. And in just
back many years ago, when he was first starting his channel up, I think the very first, I don't even think the video's up anymore. One of the very first videos I saw him do, he was talking about the known fuzziness of near Earth asteroids and how we know where they're at and we know where they're going and we can predict where they're going to be, usually. Like, not always. There's a certain amount of fudginess in how well we know where near Earth objects are, because they can be affected by unknown near Earth objects, and which can change them. Well, it's what the math. It's wacky. Yeah, no, he didn't do specifically interstellar stuff at that point. He was doing, like, I think he had one video about haplogroups and just nothing to do with the blood itself, but about the statistical breakdown of the numbers involved. And it was pretty interesting. I don't remember exactly what he had to say, but it was pretty neat.
Just the last few months, there actually have been two other propositions that kind of take the cake for being even maybe a little bit crazier. At least when it comes to the question of, let's solve the climate change by doing something absolutely ridiculous. And so in this video, basically let's explore these crazy propositions that I guess scientifically do make sense, but also really don't. They really do not make much sense at all. Usually for one simple reason. Even though they might lower the temperature of the planet by like 1 degree or 2 degrees, they'll actually end up destroying the planet in a completely different way. And so without further ado, let's start with the first one. Now this one is probably not the worst, and you might have heard of this one before, but essentially it would involve similar components to what we usually find in volcanoes. Here we're talking about things like sulfur dioxide. With the proposition being really simple, can we basically just spray it somewhere in the upper atmosphere using a lot of different airplanes, thus producing similar...
So, hypothetically speaking, and I'm going out on a limb with this one, if you wanted to achieve something like this, you would have to figure out a way to introduce it into virtually every single jet engine on the planet so that it would automatically disperse your product, possibly leaving some form of, I don't know what you would call it, a chemical trail of some sort in the atmosphere that would probably be observable from the ground. But I don't know. What do I know? I'm just some hairy dude from Georgia.
Effects to what we usually expect from a typical volcanic eruption, which generally does lead to a slight decrease in temperature, mostly because of the effects of sulfur dioxide, as it essentially blocks some of the sunlight, preventing it from reaching the surface and from warming up the planet. And there's of course at least one startup that already is trying to do that as well. Make sunsets. It's actually two dudes trying to launch a bunch of balloons filled with sulfur dioxide to have it delivered into the upper atmosphere. And the thing is, a few years back, similar ideas or potential experiments have been actually banned in countries like Sweden, and so this startup unofficially, or technically illegally, conducted their experiment in Mexico, which led to Mexico banning future experiments of similar type. And so basically here, most governments and technically most scientists don't really want to try this because we don't really know what it's going to lead to. Obviously it might lower the temperatures a little bit, but at the same time sulfur dioxide also destroys ozone. So yeah, it's quite a big trade-off. Also, as far as I know, that's basically the premise of Snowpiercer. Their icy world was created because of similar experiments. And as far as I remember,
you can also argue that that's part of the plot to The Matrix, because that's basically what they did to destroy the surface to try to eliminate the rivets to get rid of the sun, as they overburdened the atmosphere with too much particulate so that the solar would be wiped out. I think
we actually become cannibals in this movie. I don't want that. I don't want to eat anyone. So yeah, launching balloons or airplanes releasing sulfur dioxide, maybe not the smartest idea. But similarly, there have been other propositions of maybe just increasing the amounts of clouds. Clouds are white, they basically reflect some of the light, and increase the total albedo of the planet, thus cooling down things in the process. And cloud seeding or weather modification is something that's been used for decades now, and is definitely actively used in a lot of different countries. There's an older video in the description that describes a lot of this in detail. The problem is that here, if we use things like airplanes, we would need a huge amount of airplanes pretty much flying every day trying to produce clouds in certain regions. And ironically, just by flying those airplanes, we're dramatically increasing the overall emissions from those airplanes, possibly even counteracting the effects from the clouds. Now, alternatively, it's possible to use maybe ships, which actually has been proposed by several studies, with at least one study from the Royal Society, suggesting we can produce these specialized ships that could basically produce clouds simply by swimming around. But in this case,
I'm not specifically adverse to the development of the technology to accomplish the things they're wanting to accomplish. However, I don't think they should be implemented all willy-nilly without some seriously heavy-duty long-term, like a generation from now. If we're there, then do it, but not. Let's not invent them and then build 10 million of them. Let's not do that, right? I think the technology would be useful in an attempt to terraform or possibly build a habitat or something like that on the moon. This is sort of the type of things that you would have to get the base foundational theory out of the way, because there's so many variables in a system like this that if you're going to try to terraform another planet, this is the only way to actually learn to do it. And if you can convince the world that we need to, then those technologies will be developed. Either that or aliens are coming, the government knows, and they're coming for a dance-off, and TikTok is training an army of super dancers.
We still need at least 1,000 of these. They would have to be active at all times, and at the same time, because they would be evaporating a lot of water, here the effects are once again somewhat difficult to predict. All of this evaporated water is also once again a relatively potent greenhouse gas, so we don't really know if those ships are going to produce clouds or just more vapor. I mean, it's definitely not the worst idea, but yeah, not the best either. But here's an idea that's a little bit cheaper and also possibly even not that bad: using plankton. Plankton is actually a huge carbon sink on planet Earth, and as these tiny organisms replicate, they often absorb huge amounts of carbon. Some of them also produce huge amounts of oxygen. And so by using things like, for example, pumps, it might be possible to encourage the growth of plankton by basically pushing huge amounts of nutrient-rich waters into much colder depths of the ocean in order to mix the water and in order to encourage plankton growth. And interestingly, these extremely large blooms of algae and plankton.
I'm only going to do this once. You're welcome. Let's fly through the moon. Let's flow through the tide. That's all you get.
Usually happen after major volcanic eruptions. Here's one after Tonga. This is like hundreds of kilometers in size. And so creating something like this artificially has a chance of dramatically reducing carbon levels by turning it into actual little creatures. But obviously this is not without problems either, because some of this bloom has a tendency to be toxic to other life. And at the same time, by encouraging growth in certain biomes, it might completely destroy the ecosystem. So here
I have been doing my shows on the same days at the same time for almost 2 years. I'm autistic, I don't change much.
Here, the long-term effects are completely unknown. Okay, this kind of an experiment would be kind of interesting to try on a much smaller scale, just to see what happens, but I would definitely not use this on a planetary scale in order to try to reduce the temperatures. Here's actually another somewhat unusual proposition: Arctic Ice Project. The point here is to spread tiny glass beads that you see right here on top of the surface of ice across the entire Arctic. And if you're asking why, I mean, the answer is pretty obvious, right? Wait, hold on, what is the answer? Oh yeah, that's right. It's to make things more reflective. It's to create more albedo. Less sunlight absorbed, less ice melted. By having ice absorb less sunlight, we expect it to melt less. And according to the website, it's actually already being tested somewhere in Norway. Okay, cool. I guess we'll see how that goes. Although somehow, I'm not sure if putting tiny pieces of glass across the entire Arctic is going to do wonders for other life. I mean, we already have microplastics pretty much everywhere. Now we're also going to have microglass beads. So not entirely sure where all of this goes just yet, but I guess we're going to find out in the next few years. But all of these previous ideas were kind of on the older side. A lot of them have been talked about for months or even years, and as I mentioned, some of them have already started their initial experiments. But in the last few months, we also got these two somewhat brand new ideas that I also wanted to talk about because, yeah, we probably shouldn't do those either. Okay, the first one is kind of intriguing,
he's right,
but intriguing for different reasons. It's based on a concept known as space sunshade or sun shield, a somewhat old geoengineering idea that basically suggests we can change the temperature of the planet by either amplifying or reducing the amount of sunlight by placing an object in one of the Lagrange points, specifically L1, located between Earth and the Sun, the point that is usually used for various solar telescopes, and by then essentially having something either create a sunshade, reducing the total sunlight, or amplifying sunlight in certain locations. But the previous problem with this proposition was that, well, first of all, this particular shade has to be really large, and second of all, the pressure from the sun itself at some point might completely dislodge this sun shield, making it somewhat impractical because it's not going to stay in a stable orbit for a very long time. The solar pressure is powerful enough to actually nudge certain objects by quite a large amount within just a few years. But this brand new paper from July of 2023 potentially solves that issue, introducing a tethered asteroid. Basically, a sun shield attached to an asteroid that acts as a kind of a counterweight. Okay, honestly,
all of these are kind of nice, nightmarish, dystopian concept if you think about it. The amount of effort that would have to go into it would require the dismantling of the creation of a world government, the dismantling of sovereign concepts, because it would take such a huge amount of everything.
This one kind of made me giggle. It looks like a little potato flying a kite. And I guess in theory, this could maybe work to some extent. So basically here we have our sun shield that would block some of the sunlight, reducing the overall temperature on the planet. And because it would be attached to a relatively massive asteroid, the solar pressure in this case would not have as much effect, but it would still have some effect. As a matter of fact, the Yarkovsky effect that usually pushes asteroids around is powerful enough to change the orbits of asteroids after a few years. It's actually the reason why we usually cannot predict the exact orbits of various asteroids for longer than a few hundred years. And so even here, after some time, this whole thing is still going to be moved by the pressure from the sun. It's probably going to take longer than just the solar sail itself, but it will definitely happen, thus reducing the effectiveness of the entire process. On top of this might happen. And that is not something we would like to happen. Also, moving an asteroid in a different orbit is definitely beyond our current abilities. The DART mission that was successful in 2022 nudged a much smaller asteroid by a tiny bit. In order to move a larger object from, for example, the asteroid belt into the L1 Lagrange point, we will definitely require some super advanced rocketry that we currently do not have. Lastly, in order to even make a big enough sunshade, we still have to have an object that's probably going to be at least 3 million times.
I'm assuming you've heard the concept of the space elevator. That is literally the idea, is to create a webbing material of something resembling carbon fiber or something along those lines, connecting a large asteroid to it, and then attaching it to some location on the equator of the Earth so that it can stay in a geosynchronous orbit. Supposedly it would be as stable as you could possibly imagine, but at the same time, wouldn't it be under the effects from the moon and whatnot? So I don't know, man. That just sounds like asking for an extinction level event, like a yo-yo. Draw that summit in just like
tons in mass. And so unless this is produced in outer space, placing this in orbit would be extraordinarily difficult. It's approximately as massive as 500,000 James Webb Space Telescopes. And that's of course not including the cables, which would also be required for all of this to work. So yeah, cool proposition, definitely a cool picture, but the kite flying potato is probably also not going to work either. And then we come to the final winner, the best idea, the worst idea. Although once again, the idea that's based on clever science. But before I talk about it, I wanted to briefly mention actual scientific paper that was recently released that uncovered unusual color changes on the entire planet. The oceans on the planet seem to be also changing in color as a result of climatic conditions. Now things are basically turning a little bit more green and possibly a little bit more turquoise, although here I guess I'm oversimplifying things. The color though is definitely changing, and what's intriguing here is that we know that the color of the planet affects how much heat it receives. It basically affects what's known as the albedo. You can learn about this in the description below. Now more albedo means more reflectivity. Based on this particular study, we're not entirely sure how the oceans are changing yet, or basically we don't really know the exact albedo changes, but there might be a chance that the oceans are going to be a little bit more reflective, not less reflective. Anyway, these are definitely interesting discoveries and definitely good science. Most of these changes are a result of phytoplankton, which increases the overall amounts of chlorophyll. And intriguingly, approximately 56% of all oceans changed color. But can we maybe artificially change color of the planet in order to obviously increase albedo? What a good idea, right? Yeah, maybe not. Well, at least one study that you can find in the description makes a proposition about that as well. And this is a really big if, but just bear with me here. What if we paint the planet white? And I wish I was kidding, but this is a legit proposition with actual calculations and science behind it. And to some extent, it's actually based on a recent discovery of the whitest paint ever produced. It's able to reflect approximately 98% of light. Okay, so if we take that and then basically spread it in certain regions of the planet, in theory, it will make the planet reflect more light. It will definitely increase the albedo. In practice though, we basically are talking about covering approximately 1% of surface, or the entire Sahara Desert, or I guess parts of Australia, in this super white paint. Rough calculations suggest that we need approximately 140 billion gallons, or about 200,000 Olympic swimming pools. In other words, you would need a lot of paint. And yeah, obviously someone will have to do it as well. Here it actually reminded me of that famous scene from Spaceballs when they're combing the desert. And so yeah, theoretically, we could use the super white paint to paint the planet white, making it a little bit more reflective, and thus reducing the overall temperature on the planet just enough to mitigate current climate problems.
My dog's name is Mussolini. Maximus Mussolini Rex.
But on the other hand, by doing a quick napkin calculation of the actual production costs of all of this paint, it becomes obvious that even producing this paint would be ridiculously expensive, would involve insufficient dyes and insufficient materials, and would very likely affect the climate negatively in many different ways. For example, there's only like several million tons of titanium dioxide produced annually, and that's what's usually used in a lot of white paint. Trying to figure out how to make billions of tons of this would be somewhat challenging. And more expensive, more advanced paints would obviously require even more. And so painting the planet white is, in my book, probably the silliest idea of them all, at least in terms of human engineering ideas. But you might also want to check out that video by Joe Scott just to see his take on this as well. Anyway, at least for now, well, that's kind of all I wanted to mention. I've been actually collecting these studies and sort of writing down these ideas for several years now, and we finally got to discuss some of them, at least to some extent. Now, honestly, when it comes to climate change, the opinions here are obviously divided, and it is quite a political topic, but I don't think it's an issue we're going to solve anytime soon, and definitely not by building these humongous projects that might actually end up crashing on us and in our existence in a completely different way. So, yeah, let's not rush into things, let's not launch any more balloons, and how about we just kind of stop with these crazy propositions, at least for a few years. I'm sure there's going to be a better solution. Anyway, on that note, thank you for watching, subscribe, come back tomorrow to learn something else, maybe support this channel on Patreon by joining channel membership or by buying a wonderful person t-shirt.
If you're not familiar with what this man does, where the hell have you been at? But beyond that, I got another one that's real good. Maximus I'm pretty sure that's the name of the channel. Massaman does a similar channel, but it's all about human migration paths and reproduction tables and all kinds of wonderful haplo information and linguistic studies and etymology and he gets like way deep down into that trash, but at the same time, after he gets done being really complicated, much like Anton, he'll stop and just sum it up in a quick little, well, it's like this. So-and-so did such and such and la-di-da over here, you know, and he's real good about it. Oh yeah, not really here. These people are absolute mad lads. I'm not as familiar with Dennis Bowles. I've checked everyone else out pretty much. Gypsy, the Gypsy and the Vanilla Gorilla, they do all kinds of wacky shit on their channel. Like sometimes, I mean, it's just what you never know what's going to be going on. They might be driving somewhere. They might be going to a truck stop somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Just picked up links. Yeah, no. You would have to probably do there's top chat and then all chat, live chat, or whatever it's called. Not mine, Potts, Massa Man. I don't know why, but I've used a couple of his videos. He's never given me the least bit of trouble. And he seems to be highly correct. Like I have yet to catch anything Massaman put out that he didn't immediately correct in the event that new information became available. Okay, so do we want to watch a do-it-yourself geothermal video, Call of Cthulhu, the new hydrogen jet engine that will change flight forever by Zeroth. I have The Empire Was Right by I Am Jim Huss. You reckon The Empire was right? What do you think? Make your own aircrete bricks. Hey, nope, this is it. This is what we're doing.
What happened to...
All right. So, name of this one is Max Darrett. And if I'm going to catch a copyright at this point, like one that takes me down, it'll be this video. Because I was kind of sketchy on doing it at all and hadn't really decided to yet. Skadoosh. Most of you had not heard of Mr. Pusser, but now you have. Congratulations. You've seen the Rock movie too, I'm sure. So there it is. And that is Max Darrett. And this particular video, I think, is one he excels in. Some of his other stuff isn't as intriguing, at least to me. You might like it, but you know. But this one caught my interest.
Tony Soprano at the end of The Sopranos. What did Pam whisper to Michael when he left the office for the last time? What was inside the GS ball in the Pokemon anime? And just what the hell is Goofy supposed to be? It's not unusual for television shows to leave us with unsolved mysteries, be it for creative reasons, the business constraints of television, or because the audience wouldn't be able to handle the answer, especially with that Goofy thing. Thankfully, though, these unanswered mysteries don't tend to be so egregious as to ruin the series as a whole. At the very worst, they end up being a minor frustration. Having said that, there is one TV show that is infamous for introducing a bunch of mysteries and never providing explicit answers for them. In fact, it's so infamous for this that it might make up half of the unanswered mysteries in the history of the television medium. I'm of course talking about Lost, a show that follows the survivors of a plane crash on a mysterious island. Now, before the Lost fans go all smoke monster on me thinking I'm about to trash the series, I'm not. Lost is my favorite TV show, aside from The Simpsons. Plus, I'm enough of a fan to know that while many of the mysteries from Lost don't receive explicit answers, most of them do have answers that can be intuited if you keep its biggest themes in mind. Themes like free will versus fate.
I'll be honest, I missed Lost. At the time Lost came out, I was working like off grid. So I was like well outside of the cell phone reach. So I just completely missed like 3 years of TV programming. And this is, you know, although I will admit that during just about that same time period, I would sometimes take like, I think it was Wednesdays at 6 or something like that. Heroes would come on. And I would no bullshit. When they changed the time, I started knocking off work early and going home and watching it. I'd come back to work afterwards, go watch Heroes, just sit there and watch it. Because save the cheerleader, save the world.
Fate and science versus the supernatural. Granted, those intuited answers do require a greater degree of research than I think should be required from the average viewer. But those that do engage in that research are very often rewarded with something mind-blowing. In that vein, I want to provide an answer to what I believe is not just the greatest mystery of Lost, but what might be the greatest mystery in the history of television drama. It's a mystery that spanned the show's entire 6-season run, one that we, who watched the show when it originally aired, figured we would inevitably receive an explicit answer for, but never did.
Yeah, the screen actors, the SCAG strike and the writer's strike was what ended Heroes, because it was rolling real good, and then suddenly everything went to shit.
I'm of course talking about the numbers. 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, and 42. Now, to those who know nothing about Lost, the numbers are a meaningful pattern that appears throughout the show, not as a meaningless coincidence or Easter egg, but as something intrinsic to the plot. Sometimes the numbers show up as individual digits. For example, the name of the plane that crashed at the very beginning of the show was Oceanic Flight 815. Other times, all of the numbers will show up at once, like when a character named Hurley is going through an airport and we see the numbers show up on the jerseys of 6 soccer players. The viewer was left to determine whether or not there was a meaning to these appearances. Though I think most Lost fans would surmise that there was a meaning, it was never made clear on the show itself. However, I'm happy to say that I believe there is a comprehensive, well-rounded answer to this mystery, and I'm going to lay it out for all of you today. Quickly, before I do, I will say that there are obviously spoilers ahead, but I did my best to keep the spoilers limited to the topic at hand. I believe you can watch this video and still enjoy 95% of Lost and the mysteries it provides, because like I said, the mystery of the numbers was never fully explained.
Brown coats forever. Absolutely. I have a full Mal costume, pistol included. I don't have the space pistol. I went with the Mark IV, the one that looks like a laser pistol. I went and bought the pistol that Inara uses on that Mal's wife. Dude, Serenity is usually what I end up putting on backstage when we're sitting around just talking after shows and whatnot. I'll put on Serenity or Firefly or something along those lines, because God, I love those shows. They're awesome.
We are first introduced to the numbers in episode 18 of season 1, an episode that focuses around the life of the aforementioned Hurley before the plane crash. At the beginning of the episode, Hurley is watching television at home while arguing with his mother about the current state of his life. While doing this, he is checking the results of a recent lottery on television, where he chose those same 6 numbers. To his astonishment, those numbers won him $114 million. Though this lottery win brings the obvious benefits, a string of unfortunate and seemingly random events also begin to transpire. His grandpa suffers a heart attack and dies. The day Hurley buys his mom a house, the house not only gets set ablaze, but his mom breaks her ankle and he gets arrested under false suspicions of drug dealing. When he buys a chicken restaurant, it gets hit by a meteorite. These, among other instances of bad luck, led Hurley to believe the numbers are cursed. Determined to figure out why this is happening, Hurley goes to the man who inspired him to choose those particular numbers to play the lottery, a man named Leonard. Hurley met Leonard when they were both being treated at a mental health institute. Hurley noticed that Leonard would persistently mutter those 6 numbers under his breath, a product of Leonard's catatonia. Hurley asked Leonard where those numbers came from.
Not really here, and Tinfoil Tea Party. If Swiss Miss returns, she will realize what's happening and will block one or the other of you. If things are going as I think they are. I could be wrong. What do I know? Harry, dude, the swamp.
To which Leonard offers no response. Hurley then begs Leonard for an answer, telling him what has been happening to him ever since he played those numbers in the lottery. When Leonard hears this, he breaks out of his catatonic state and flies into hysteria. He tells Hurley that he should...
Yeah, my autistic memory is unrivaled when it comes to incidental bullshit that was said mid-conversation. Yeah, I heard that. You said it out loud, and I thought that was a very strange statement. I had no idea what a tinfoil tea party could possibly be. I was like, I want me a tinfoil tricorn hat. Like a full, you know what I mean. Me effects, please.
Shouldn't have done that, and that he, quote, opened the box. Before being escorted away by hospital staff, Hurley asks Leonard again where he heard the numbers from, to which he responds that he should seek out a man named Sam Toomey, who resides in Kalgoorlie, Australia. Hurley travels to Kalgoorlie to meet with Sam's widow, Martha. She tells Hurley that Leonard and Sam heard those numbers when they were stationed at a listening post to monitor the Pacific Ocean. They heard the numbers playing through a looped radio broadcast coming from an unknown source. This was all the information that Hurley was able to divine before he crashed on the island, an event that he, of course, blames his bad luck for. Towards the end of episode 18, Hurley meets a woman named Danielle, whose boat crashed on the island 17 years prior. Hurley hands her a piece of paper that another character, Saeed, stole from her camp when he was captured by her. On that paper were the same numbers repeated over and over. He asks her why she wrote those numbers down, and she reveals that she got them from a radio tower broadcasting on the island. As we find out throughout Season 2, this radio tower was placed there as a part of a scientific research project called the Dharma Initiative. We learn that the initiative's presence on the island had something to do with a large pocket of electromagnetic energy that laid underneath. At one point, there was an incident that caused...
So there's a spaceship under the island. Congratulations.
Caused that electromagnetic energy to balloon to such an extent that it might threaten the entire globe.
Russian
to stop
spaceship?
this, the Dharma Initiative created a system that would discharge the electromagnetic buildup.
All right, honey.
This
Good
was
to see you. I
accomplished
appreciate
by
you coming by.
inputting a code into a computer every 108 minutes. And yes, this code was 4815162342. As interesting as this all is, this does not reveal why those numbers were chosen for the computer, why they were broadcast from the radio tower, why they show up everywhere, and why they cause bad luck. Unfortunately, the answers to these questions were never provided to us, at least on the show itself.
I want some friggin' answers!
There are clear-cut answers for why those numbers were chosen for the code and why they were broadcast, and those answers provide a clue regarding their seemingly supernatural properties. However, the only way you would get those answers is if you participated in a marketing campaign that took place between the end of Season 2 and the beginning of Season 3, an online alternate reality game known as The Lost Experience. No, seriously. The creators of the show decided to hide answers to the show's biggest mystery exclusively in a marketing campaign that only the most hardcore of Lost fans would be interested in. And it was awesome. Admittedly, this probably wasn't the best way to handle the mystery of the numbers, but for people like myself who actively participated in the Lost Experience ARG back in the day, finding answers for the numbers was so exciting. It was like finding definitive proof that the government was covering up the existence of aliens. Now, I won't go into all the things that Lost fans had to do in order to crack the enigma of the numbers. If you want a full list, please check out Inside a Mind's fantastic recap of the Lost Experience, which I will link in the description box below. For this video, I will just focus on the most relevant details. When episode 20 of Season 2 originally aired in the United States, a commercial for the fictitious Hanso Foundation played. In the Lost universe,
I feel like I get it. I feel like you're perfectly clear with how you feel about this particular thing.
The Hanso Foundation was a financial organization that funded the Dharma Initiative. At the end of that commercial was a phone number you could call, where you could listen to recordings from various employees at the Hanso Foundation. In a couple of these recordings, we heard the employees speak, only for their recordings to be overridden by a mysterious woman named Persephone. She told us that the Hanso Foundation was not to be trusted. If we wanted to learn the truth about them, she said we should go to their website and find a place to type in the words "breaking strain." If you input these words in the area where you could sign up for the website's newsletter, the site would glitch, revealing a variety of messages and codes left by Persephone. Eventually, these messages and codes enabled Lost fans to discover.
Let me get this straight. So these assholes, after writing a show no one could figure out, decided to go add another layer of fourth wall permeability by creating an online alternate reality game where you could go and find more unanswered clues. Oh, that's evil. That's diabolical. An army of autists hired immediately to figure it out.
Discover Persephone's true identity and why she was against the Hanso Foundation. Her real name was Rachel Blake, and she revealed her intention to expose Hanso for deeply unethical behavior behind the scenes. Later in the summer of 2006, Rachel made an appearance at Comic-Con in San Diego during a panel being held for Lost. During the Q&A segment, she told people to visit hansoexposed.com if they wanted to know the truth about the Hanso Foundation. When you went to that website, you found a 6-minute video cut into 70 clips. All 70 of those clips had to be unlocked with a code, and these codes were hidden both in real life and on the internet. These ranged from places that were obvious, like Rachel Blake's blog and the official Lost magazine, to really unusual places, like a random field in Greenwich, London, or an advertisement in Times Square. Eventually, all codes were discovered, the video was pieced together, and the mystery of the numbers was finally given concrete answers. The video features Alvar Hanso, the CEO of the Hanso Foundation, explaining the true reason why.
All right. So this has suddenly taken like a weird kind of SCP vibe to it. Am I the only one sensing that? If anyone is familiar with the SCP series.
The Dharma Initiative was established. After the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, the The United States and the Soviet Union joined forces through the United Nations Security Council to ensure a similar crisis would never happen again. The primary result of this collaboration was something known as the Valenzetti equation. Produced by an Italian mathematician named Enzo Valenzetti, the equation, quote, predicted the exact number of years and months before humanity extinguishes itself. Valenzetti gave numerical value to the core environmental and human factors in his equation, and that numerical value was the 6 numbers. The chief goal of the Dharma Initiative was to find ways to manipulate the environment in a drastic way so that humanity would not destroy itself through various forms of warfare, pandemic, overpopulation, etc. They were on the island because they wished to manipulate the huge pocket of electromagnetic energy underneath, in the hopes that it might manipulate the world's environment enough that any of the 6 numerical values would be changed. During Dharma's tenure on the island, they set up a radio tower to broadcast the numbers on loop. If they were successful, they would let those in the outside world know by changing one or more of the numbers in the broadcast. Unfortunately, Rachel's video and the show itself makes it quite clear that their fate-altering efforts were in vain. This reveals why those particular numbers were chosen for the computer that would discharge the electromagnetic buildup, and why there was a radio tower broadcasting them. Let me remind you, none of this was revealed on the show itself. Sorry, there was one instance in episode 17 of season 2, when John Locke, one of the main characters, accidentally got trapped under a blast door in one of the Dharma Initiative's facilities. There's a brief moment where the light goes out and a black light turns on, revealing a map of the island on the blast door. If you pause the show and look in the bottom left-hand corner of the map, you see a very blurry notation that says, quote, low priority zone for exploration, possible site for above-ground study of low relevance to Valenzetti-related research activity. That's it. That's the only reference. The only way Lost fans would have gotten answers regarding the origin of the numbers or the radio broadcast was if they were internet geeks back in mid-2006. To this day, I wonder what percentage of the people who watched Lost are aware that these answers exist. My guess is maybe 10% or less. Again, I don't think this was the right way to address the mystery of the numbers, but as a hardcore fan of Lost, having my dedication rewarded in this way felt pretty cool. But with all of this being said, we are still left with the initial question of why the numbers show up everywhere and why they seemingly cause bad luck. Though I believe there are answers to these two questions, they are definitely not explicit. Like I said before, those answers have to be intuited. Starting with why the numbers show up everywhere, I believe the best way to explain this is to state my thesis outright and then justify after the fact. In nature, there are certain mathematical laws that reveal themselves to us. There's the...
Okay, how many of y'all watched Lost? Because, I mean, this is very similar in my mind to the disagreement I have with Carrie about whether or not Fallout 4, and don't spam fake out again, whether or not Fallout 4 is a Fallout game at all. He excommunicates the entire game. It's the only one I've had an awful lot of experience with. So I played a little bit of Fallout 3, but I didn't have access to the game regular enough to actually 15 minutes of your life. Oh, that's okay. Probably did that last time you hit that meth pipe. You know it. But I mean, what do you got to do? It's nothing but desert out there. What are you supposed to do? Okay, all right, it's not. But I I have so many questions that are completely unanswered by the franchise as it stands. And Fallout 74 and Fallout New Vegas actually kind of muddy the waters a little more because their lore and background don't seem to sync up with Fallout 3 or Fallout 2 for that matter. Peyote.
The logarithmic spiral, which is related to things like the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence.
Well, I would love if somebody could actually explain any part of this crap to me, because while I find it interesting on a surface level in that at the time that this was going on, I was into Heroes and had missed, I think, the first 2 seasons of Lost entirely out there in that freaking bayou. So I'm kind of a virgin mind on it. I've watched a few YouTube videos on it. I have attempted to watch the show itself, but after about 10 minutes of sitting there staring at, like, I don't know, I think I've watched 2 episodes, I guess. So mandatory carry over here states that Fallout 4 is not in any way associated with the rest of the Fallout franchise at all, right? And that anything lore based or physics based or, you know, the Fallout reality based should be extirpated from Fallout 4, and that you only trust 1, 2, and 3, and only parts of 3, and then I guess 74 or is it 76, 74? Fallout 76, I think. Not 3. 3 is not a part of it. Okay. Well, anyway, so Fallout 3 and 4 do kind of have some analogous things where events and stories that take place in Fallout 3 are referenced in Fallout 4. But neither of these games really reference 1 and 2 at all, except for in the style and motif of the world, which changed a whole bunch between 2 and 3, and then changed a bit between 3 and 4, and has changed since then. Now it's more cartoony and brighter. It's like the artists all just gave up, started phoning it in with like AI.
There's the Pareto principle, which dictates that 80% of outcomes are dictated by 20% of causes, a principle that can be roughly applied to the way wealth distributes itself in a society. Regarding the Valenzetti numbers, I believe that they are like these other mathematical patterns showing up in nature, with one important distinction. They represent the most fundamental natural law of all, and that is fate. When the law of fate is guiding you to a predetermined end, that law will leave its mathematical signature either as singular digits in the equation or as a complete string. This theory of mine is supported in 2 key ways. One is in the purpose of the Valenzetti equation.
Okay, so in theory, if you could change the value of fate, it would automatically change the numbers that are being broadcast, because it would change all of the numbers in the equation that are randomly placed throughout existence, wouldn't it? I don't know.
Equation itself. They are the variables which dictate all of humanity's fate, their ultimate fate. And this fact ties perfectly into my other piece of supporting evidence, one that I stated all the way back at the beginning of the video. That is Lost's primary theme of free will versus fate. Does every person have a destiny that they need to fulfill? Or can we author our own life's direction? Without spoiling anything, Lost firmly comes down on the side of fate and determinism, with the caveat that humanity will do irrational things in order to struggle against their fate. Imagine being sucked down a large drain, but you still try to swim against the current. That is Lost's perspective on fate in a nutshell. There is one other piece of evidence to support this theory, but because I've tried to minimize spoilers for newcomers, I'm going to relegate that piece of evidence to the description box below. I will just say that it has something to do with the Dharma Initiative's experiments with electromagnetism, as well as something that is revealed in Season 6, Episode 15. Finally, why do the numbers cause bad luck?
I have a edit of a loop that appears to be the coding from the Matrix, but is actually binary coding of basically somebody typing sentences. But it's got the drip effect and all, and the green letters and all of that stuff. And if you weren't aware that it was binary when you looked at it, you would assume that it was matrix numbers because of the way they do the phosphorescent overglow from like the old computer screens. It's a really neat effect.
Well, let's be clear. They only seem to cause bad luck to the people who wield the numbers in a certain way. To my recollection, there were only two characters that did this. One was Sam Toomey, who used those numbers in a contest, and Hurley. Keeping the theme of fate in mind, I propose two possibilities. First, wielding the divine formula of fate as an imperfect mortal human could bring bad luck. Using the numbers of fate to orchestrate a life-changing event, like winning the lottery, could go against the plan that fate has for you. And the bad luck is sort of like a heavy-handed course correction. The other possibility is that maybe fate anticipated Hurley would use those numbers to play the lottery all along, and the bad luck he experienced wasn't actually bad luck. It was the laws of nature making themselves known to Hurley so that he could seek out the reason behind them and fulfill his destiny. After all, if the instances of bad luck were instrumental in you fulfilling your destiny, can they really be bad luck? The answer to that question is the same answer regarding the true way fate operates in our lives. It's all a matter of perspective. In summary, the numbers are the mathematical signature left behind by fate, which Lost interprets as a divine law operating in our lives. Those that try to bend the law of fate, like the Dharma Initiative, will fail. But those that live in accordance with fate's whims will find that they have an unimaginably beautiful purpose that they have to fulfill. Though I believe the numbers were the greatest mystery that Lost had to offer, there are a plethora of other wonderful mysteries in the show. What was the nature of the smoke monster? Why was the character of Walt so damned special? And why do dead people show up everywhere, and how do we know or not if they are hallucinations? If you would like to see me tackle...
So how do you handle the hallucination question with Lost? You already know you can't trust... Once the hallucination question comes up, you suddenly cannot trust any aspect of the intros of any of the individuals because you have no idea how much of that stuff was actually real and how much they were hallucinating. I would like to emulate something like that when I learn green screen, but with sillier things. Yeah, no, I got some weird stuff, and this is wrong. I don't know why this is sideways like this. Oh, I do know why it's sideways like that. Hold up. That's funny. Transform. Rotate 90 degrees. Is it just not going to work at all? I don't understand. That's so weird. Am I still functional over here? Hello? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. So weird. Did I just lose it or something? Is it not here anymore? Let's blow that up, try to find the pieces. Yeah, no, it's just not going to let it be. That one's no longer functional for some reason. That's weird. No, that's not it. Why did it do that? Huh. I would really like to be able to get that to work properly, but what can you do? Gotta collapse that back down. I gotta do this thing back down here. I got a little short one over here.
This is the new hydrogen jet engine from Rolls-Royce. It is powered by hydrogen made from renewable wind and tidal electricity from the Orkney Islands in Scotland. In this video, we'll see how it works, see it in operation, and check out the plans for it to be used in commercial planes. The new jet engine from Rolls-Royce is the first modern jet engine to run on hydrogen. However, it isn't the first ever jet engine to run on hydrogen. In fact, back in
Can anyone in chat tell me the problem with utilizing hydrogen for mode of transport? There's a few of them, but the real problem, it's not safety. Hydrogen's relatively safe. We've got tech that allows us to kind of handle it pretty well. You do it something like nitrous oxide and it works fairly well, but you need really, really big tanks, right? If you're going to be utilizing a jet of hydrogen, you might actually do better using a rocket as far as horsepower conversion rates and stuff goes. But the values required, the levels of hydrogen required to run a jet, wow. And where does that hydrogen come from? Well, you use electricity to electrolyze water. And so you have to burn coal to get your green fuel, which makes no sense at all. I mean, you could try to pull something off with solar, but it's relatively unreliable and production rates would be low, and the conversion rate through a DC 12 volt into hydrogen is fairly energy intense. It's not very efficient. You would do better just burning the fucking coal, honestly.
1957, NASA flew a plane using hydrogen for 20 minutes above Lake Erie in North America. NASA's plane actually used kerosene jet engines for takeoff before switching to hydrogen for cruising. And the Soviet Union also flew a hydrogen plane in 1988. The motivation for these was the fear that kerosene jet fuel was running out, and they liked the fact that hydrogen planes were able to fly at higher altitudes. Although details are limited, it appears that the Soviet plane was actually the first to fly using only hydrogen, though the project was stopped with the fall of the Soviet Union. Considering these planes were developed decades ago, there's been considerable improvement in technology since they flew. The new jet engine from Rolls-Royce is one example of this. It operates much like a conventional jet engine, by first taking in air and compressing it using a series of compressors. Fuel is then added to the compressed air and burnt in a combustion chamber, creating a high-speed, hot gas stream. This hot gas is expelled through a nozzle at the back of the engine, producing a powerful forward thrust. Some of this power at the back of the engine is also used to drive an internal turbine, which is what spins the compressor at the front via a central shaft. Turbojet engines are actually just a type of gas turbine.
Bro, do you know the values that it takes to run a standard 8-cylinder engine? To keep one of those running on hydrogen takes an immense amount of hydrogen. You have to use a supercharger to do it. A turbo won't do it. It doesn't compress the air enough. You can't get enough boost. But a supercharger compresses the hydrogen enough to allow it to run. And you don't run air aspirated. You run basically canned oxygen, not oxygen, but canned air. You run compressed air with compressed hydrogen, and you use a supercharger to compress the final product down enough to make it usable in an 8-cylinder, because the values are absolutely freaking absurd. The amount of volume you have to have. No, there's a limit to how big your alternator can be attached to an engine burning hydrogen. First of all, you have an engine designed to function on gasoline that is actually utilizing a fuel that is 40% less dense than gasoline. So, right off the top, you lose 40% of your horsepower. So in order to make a useful engine utilizing hydrogen, you have to start with something small block or bigger. It's like, for instance, let's take my Xterra out there. It gets 210 horsepower supercharged. It could be converted over to hydrogen, but it would only get 102 horsepower because you would lose some of it in the 40% range, and then because the horsepower is lower, you have a higher friction quotient because everything's moving a little slower. And then you have knocking issues, lubrication problems, because you're functioning at so much of a higher compression value and ratings. It would be an interesting build to do. I know it's been done a couple of times, but if you were going to do it, I think you should go for something like a tunable Coyote or something along those lines. Yeah, no, I've always wondered about a rotary engine. I always figured if you could get 3 or 4 of them stacked together and you could get a high enough value of hydrogen run through it, you might be able to do the air aspirated hydrogen, provided the air was cooled before it entered. One of the issues with hydrogen is it burns so fast that there's no time for transfer of energy. It can literally burn a hole through the bottom of a piston, because you can take a hydroxy torch and cut through tungsten. You can take a hydroxy torch and cut through granite or a cinder block, a freaking fire brick. You can cut straight through it because there's a combination effect going on here. Not only is the hydrogen burning with the oxygen, but a little bit of the oxygen is left over to interact with the actual surfaces of the materials, right? And so not only is it burning it, it is also oxidizing the living shit out of it. So if that material doesn't burn, what it oxidizes into probably burns, or at least melts. I actually know a ridiculous amount about Tesla. I've got some of his the later publishings of his later papers and patents and stuff.
Turbine, and variations of these are used on many commercial planes, known as turbofans and turboprops. These also use the power at the back of the engine to turn a turbine, but they then use some of it to spin a fan or propeller at the front. This draws in more air and increases the efficiency at slower flight speeds. Although the main ideas of a hydrogen jet engine are the same as a standard jet engine, there are some changes that need to be made. The first thing to change would be the fueling system, such as the pumps, fuel lines, and fuel injectors, so that liquid hydrogen can be converted into gas and distributed into the engine. The combustion chamber, where the hydrogen and air mixture ignite, also needs to be a slightly different shape to optimize the combustion. And because hydrogen burns hotter than current jet fuel, new engine parts must also be developed to withstand the higher temperatures, requiring new coatings or materials to be used. Finally, because hydrogen burns 10 times faster than conventional jet fuel, new control systems will be needed to make sure the flames are stable. So that is an overview of how it works. Now,
what are you expecting superconductors to do for hydrogen? I don't understand. Room temperature. I'm assuming you mean room temperature superconductors, which are really what the big holdup is. Let's see. Benefit you get from room temperature superconductors is you can more efficiently manipulate the electrical conductivity in wires that are more conductive by themselves at low temperatures. However, with a room temperature superconductor, there's a limit to how much water you can crack, bro. It's a chemical limit in the electrolyte quotient, and you have to add water as you're cracking it, and you have to do it. I built me a small hydroxy system, and I damn near blew my fucking eyebrows off. I'm not even joking, dude. That shit is unreal. I got the cops over here 3 times because they were hearing quote unquote gunshots because I was setting off soap bubbles. Blowing people's minds. I was using it like a party trick. I'd just go get some foam and be like, "Pow!" And boy, that shit loud too, man. It'd make you wonder. But the thing is that's as much an exploit. What's up, John Denicola? Good to see you, buddy. I'm over here on the tail end of the show. I was fixing to ease up out of here before something bad happened to me. Void. Slaves. Oh. What if I chose to work here? What if I'm not actually being paid and I choose to do this with my own spare time? Does that make me a slave? Yeah, no, I get that. But the thing is any system that you utilize to manipulate electricity creates loss. So every step in the process generates loss. So you have to make electricity through some method in order to provide the hydrogen and compress the oxygen or the air that you're using to go with it. And you can't make enough energy to replace that electricity through the system. Even the engine itself has too much friction in it. Do you see what I'm saying? Like it's a endlessly descending loop until you reach a point where you can no longer function it.
Let's see it in action. But first, if you're into free, interesting content, I think you'll really like the sponsor of this video, Morning Brew. Instead of aimlessly scrolling through random, dry news.
Okay, that's about enough of that. We're going to skip to the next point. He's still selling shit. I think he's still selling shit.
Free using my link below. Right. Now, this is the Rolls-Royce jet engine running at the test site in England. It is actually a modified version of an existing turboprop, and you can even see the water it emits forming a nearby pool of water.
Yeah.
In this other video, you can see the engine heating up as it runs, with a trail of hot gas being exhausted out of the back. With these developments in hydrogen engines being made, we may soon benefit from the CO2-free flights that they can enable. However, there are some drawbacks for hydrogen-powered planes, with the most obvious one being the challenges with storage. This is why the plane...
I guess it's handy that I don't really have to prove anything to you. Because, you know, I'm just hanging out, seeing what Sass watches, right? You know, chilling with Sasquatch, what we're doing. We're just sitting over here. I've got a whole list of things. We talk about it. We discuss it. Sometimes I have guests. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just sit here and babble incoherently at a random person who wandered in my chat with strange things to say. Do you have content? What does your channel eat? Let's find out. Blender and cakewalk mix. Cakewalk test. Trident investigations. Brand man wave. Okay. Well, I'll give you an E for effort, bro. You did something. Cute bears. Can you prove anything about slavery? But can you define how we're? I mean, you've got 3 minutes, bro. I've got 3 minutes to kill. I got like a half-minute outro to play over here. Like, no, I think he finds that he can prove himself a slave. I find that disconcerting, but okay. I can show you a million ways how my name, my presence, my purpose, and my image have been utilized with or without my consent to tie me to locations, places, times, dates, and situations, circumstance, bank accounts, income, expenditures, and all kinds of other things that I'm not going to get into right now. And if that's slavery, then yeah, we're all slaves except for the North Sentinelese, and they're probably enslaved to a chief. So, I mean, you kind of got to choose your battles on that one, bro. Pick the hill you're willing to die on and go with it, I guess. If we could transfer heat directly into energy, that would be useful. As it is currently, we don't really have an effective way to just do that. It takes a significant heat difference to generate charge. So, I mean, yeah, if you make it hot enough, but if you're talking about it operating the same on the top of Mount Everest versus Death Valley, you know, I guess that's where those room temperature superconductors come in. See, I like the idea of rotaries. The issue with rotaries is they aren't really built up to snuff to deal with the RPMs necessary to run hydrogen. When hydrogen is running, like the dude who built the hydrogen 8-cylinder Coyote truck, he was using a hydrogen NOS mix, right? And he was also utilizing stainless steel pistons, stainless steel sleeves, a stainless steel exhaust. So, I mean, you exchange energy somewhere, whether it's financially or actually in the loss of the of the friction between materials. Because as I understand it, stainless steel ain't exactly the slipperiest stuff on earth. I wonder what would happen if you got in there and polished it to a mere shine. Those cross thatch those things, though, right? You're a free man, even if chained, son. Yeah, they can't lock me up here. I can be careful about what I say. You ain't got to crush me. It ain't necessary. I mean, I guess you can if you want to. Spitballing? Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. No, that's cool. You did good. I appreciate the effort. You get an E for it, I suppose. Dennis Bowles gets the participation trophy of the night. Congratulations. So yeah, I had an excellent time. This was fun. I find it strange that American Justice of Texas, AJOT, showed up and hung out with me up till about 10 minutes before I went live and then disappeared with no explanation. That intrigues me and worries me indeed, because I even created a banner to annoy her. Because Toe for Life is my baby daddy and a sparkle simp, and I forgive him. He knows not what he does. The ceramic is key to friction. Ceramic is really cool when it works. You know, just like carbon fiber. Like we have the ability now to make carbon fiber push rods and carbon fiber connecting rods. And the thing about that is they do work obscenely well. We just don't know how well they work over long periods. So it's fine for a racing engine where we're going to pull it apart at the end of the weekend and put it back together before the next race. That's fine. But if you stick something like that in a production car, I just don't see your average mechanic being willing to touch something that's got carbon fiber components. And I'm not sure how well they actually deal, because they're a resin-based component, right? So heat could have effects on them that can't be generated in a lab. If it's making personal, hey Boyd, there's a StreamYard link pinned to the top of the chat. I was just wrapping this all up. I'm gonna click my little button over there, and then we're gonna be out of here. But I'll be in studio for another few minutes afterwards if you want to chat about that, because I got this thing I do you might be interested in on there. We'll see. Anyway, I appreciate each and every one of you for coming by. I thank you for coming through. Love each and every one of you like a brother and a sister. But if you give me any trouble tonight, I'll run every single goddamn one of y'all off this mountain. Gosh.
Sorry. Good news, though. We're going to have to move the party somewhere a little bit more private, but you're all invited. Lorenzo will give you the details. Yeah!
Hey, she was a cutie in a sundress. I told her I just had to confess. I got a crush on you, darling. Them long tan legs got me falling.